Hi, beautiful people. Good morning. It is 12:30 Pacific Standard Time, and you guys know I like to catch the mornings with you. It is a nice rainy day so far, and you know, my mind went back to Nancy Guthrie. I'm going to give you guys a complete timeline on what's happening with her, the updates. There's still hope, even though it's looking grim for this 84-year-old grandmother. I'm praying once again for the best, and I'm going to get into my commentary, okay? And I hope that you guys are doing all right. Okay, now hopefully my audio will do me justice. Hey, Bob, prayers, right? I'm gonna give you guys a timeline in case you guys miss anything from it. Um, Prayers to the lady. Let me wait a minute. How do I? Sorry. Trying to see here. Wait, no, it's not what I want. Hey, Marlong. There we go. I wanna watch this with you guys. Good morning. Let me get into the video.
Tonight, a haunting image in the middle of the night.
We do believe that Nancy was taken from
Let me know if
home
you can hear it.
against her will, and that's where we're at.
An 84-year-old woman seen her home.
We're not out there. We need help.
An investigation with so many twists and turns, ransom notes, surveillance cameras, massive searches in the Catalina foothills.
People could be walking up and down, and they're not going to see.
There's a trail of new clues each day as investigators are on the clock to try to put the pieces together, while millions around the world watch their every move.
I can't recall in 46 years of law enforcement service a case like that ever occurring.
Where is Nancy Guthrie? A special edition of News Nation starts right now.
How are you doing, Jane?
2 weeks ago today, this quiet neighborhood in Tucson erupted with the news of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. 14 days later, there's been so many twists and turns. Are investigators any closer to finding answers? That is the big question right now. Good evening, everybody. I'm Brian Enton. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of News Nation, Missing, the Nancy Guthrie missing case, as we continue to look into this mystery. Not a day goes by without some sort of key development in the search for the 84-year-old. She's a mother of Savannah Guthrie, and she's a mother of Cameron and also Annie Guthrie too. And that includes last night, where there were developments last night. The sheriff here tells me there were no arrests in that major SWAT raid that we saw last night connected to the case about 2 miles from here. I'm told that there were no arrests, but there is still interest in exactly what happened last night. Investigators are looking into leads that they worked on, and I'm told that they continue to flush those things out. And even though there were no arrests, the investigation is far from over. We are going to get to more of that in just moments. We're going to go through exactly what happened last night. I have News Nation's Jessica Cartalia and Marnie Hughes here with me as we go through all of the details of everything since the beginning. But first, we want to take you through a timeline, take you back to when all of this began.
Pure joy. What? Oprah, not Oprah.
Sunday, January 31st, just about 30 minutes before sunset, Nancy Guthrie travels by Uber to the home of her oldest daughter, Annie. After dinner and games, son-in-law Tommaso Cioni brings her home. The time is 9:48. 2 minutes pass, and the 84-year-old's garage door closes. After midnight, Monday, February 1st, a masked, armed man approaches Nancy's door. Head down, he focuses in on the home's doorbell camera, then turns back to grab foliage in a clumsy attempt to cover the device.
There's no question that this was planned.
By 1:47 a.m., that Nest Cam is disconnected. At 2:12 a.m., another house camera detects movement. 16 minutes later, 2:28, Nancy's pacemaker disconnects from the app on her phone.
Hey, Jerome.
A friend who
Landlord say, I
regularly
remember
hosts
you.
Nancy to watch a streamed church service alerts the family that she's absent.
Salute, landlord.
11:56, family goes to Nancy's home to investigate. 7 minutes later, 911 is called.
Nancy Giuffre, 84-year-old white female, 5'4", 150, brown and blue, last and wearing unknown clothing.
12:15, sheriff's deputies arrive at Nancy's house and the search begins.
Breaking overnight, Nancy Guthrie, Savannah's 84-year-old mother, now at the center of a missing persons case.
Monday, February 2nd, the nation wakes to learn of Guthrie's family's nightmare. The Today Show begins without Savannah and with grave news.
And our thoughts and our prayers are with our dear friend and colleague and her family this morning. We saw some things at the home that were concerning to us.
9 a.m., the Pena County Sheriff's press conference is carried live from coast to coast.
This is a 84-year-old lady who suffers from some physical ailments, is in need of medication that if she doesn't have in 24 hours, it could be fatal.
A local TV station receives a ransom note with specific details about what Nancy was wearing and with 2 distinct deadlines.
We're gathering some DNA samples to get those to our crime lab. But yes, it's evident to us that she was moved from that house against her will.
By the next day, Tuesday, February 3rd, the sheriff updates News Nation about that DNA.
It confirmed that the DNA that we found belonged to Nancy, Savannah's mom.
It's announced that Savannah will be pulling out of Olympics coverage, and she asked the nation, just pray on Instagram. While sheriff's helicopters circle, News Nation brings viewers a sobering scene. We were able to get up close to the house right near the front door, and there is blood. There is a blood trail near the front door of Nancy Guthrie's house.
Hey, Donna.
Wednesday, February 4th, days after the crime scene is released, law enforcement converges with dogs, a perimeter, and investigators all over the property.
Are they getting things in the garage, or are they just using it to go in and out?
And love for her daughters and family.
Nancy's neighbors gather in prayer.
Now hang in there, Nancy. You got this.
President Trump posts pledging immediate federal support.
On behalf of our family.
And for the first time, we hear from the anguished family, directly addressing the kidnapper.
She is a devoted friend. She is full of kindness and knowledge. Talk to her and you'll see.
Thursday, February 5th sees a meager reward for information bump up to $50,000. Deputies canvass behind Annie Guthrie's home. A 5 p.m. ransom deadline comes and goes. And Nancy's only son posts a message.
Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you.
The FBI deploys digital billboards on Friday, February 6th. Nancy's car is towed. We learn another ransom note goes to a local TV station.
Is it, written by the same person? It's very difficult to tell.
And reporters aboard Air Force One get a briefing.
We have some clues, I think, that are very strong. And I think we could have some answers coming up fairly soon.
Saturday, February 7th, brings a flurry of activity both at Nancy and Annie Guthrie's home.
So I'm outside Annie Guthrie's house. Camera flashes from inside the house coming from the windows. So
Nancy's children release another emotional video.
We received your message and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us.
The septic tank behind Nancy's home is searched on Sunday the 8th.
We're now in day 9. FBI Director Kash Patel will be in Tucson today.
The work week begins with the FBI director on site, but behind the scenes. And as a ransom note's second deadline passes, the woman who typically spends her days cheerfully on camera turns to another appeal.
If you see anything, you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. We are at an hour of desperation. And we need your help.
Tuesday, February 10th, a bombshell. The FBI's work nets the video seen around the world.
What we see is planned, but not professional.
Developments unfold rapidly, sending law enforcement south to Rio Rico, Arizona. I'm outside the house that is now being searched. This is her house, and the subject is her son-in-law.
Yeah,
is that right?
Son, yeah.
Deputies detain a man for questioning, and then his release.
Like, what the am I doing here? I didn't do anything, to be honest. Like, I'm innocent.
Wednesday, February 11th, the FBI searches along roadways in the Catalina foothills, and a black glove is reported to be found.
Get it forensically tested, come up with a DNA profile.
The 12th, shortly after a forensic height chart is brought in, we get this description of the man at the door. 5'9" to 5'10", average build. His backpack, a Walmart brand, 25-liter Ozark trail hiker.
They are saying as well that they now have 13,000 tips from the public.
Friday the 13th brings rain and gloomy skies for the first time since the kidnapping, and a growing display from a heartbroken community.
People care.
A report of new evidence.
You have unknown DNA that you have found, DNA that does not match anybody in the Guthrie family, does not match anybody working for Nancy Guthrie inside her home.
So someone's leaving. Nightfall nets the most activity to date. A mobile command center, the bomb squad, and a SWAT team. Multiple people detained, and a nation increasingly desperate to bring Nancy home.
Can't imagine that if they get somebody that lives right next to me on my street, that, you know, that even makes sense.
And joining me live now is News Nation's Jessica Cartalia. She is live from the Pima County Sheriff's Office. Jessica, no arrests with this SWAT operation that we saw last night. What do we know about what happened there?
Yeah, really incredible, Brian, because we thought this could be it, right? Hopefully we have something that leads us to Nancy Guthrie. It turned out they took them into custody. They took two people into custody, or detained two people in this home, another at a nearby traffic stop. You can only hold someone, though, as you know, when you're detaining someone for 48 hours. They were not arrested in this case. And at that point, police had to let them go. They said they were following a lead, but it did not turn out to be warrant of an arrest. Now, that said, the sheriff did also say today, Brian, that we could expect to see more situations just like this as these leads continue to come here to the Pima County Sheriff's Department.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, Jessica. You're outside the sheriff's office now, so obviously you'll let us know if there's any more activity, because that's where the SWAT team initially rolled from. Do we know what else to expect? Could there be another operation, say, tonight?
You know, it's very interesting. Of course, they're not telling the media much at all through this entire process. We know that Sheriff Cresnanos from the beginning was very vocal and then had to walk back some of the things that he said. So crickets coming out of here. We have not had updates in quite some time. The latest that we've heard was from the FBI when they released that video of the suspect. They also gave a description after they walked into the house with that height chart, Brian. But we have not heard anything. Following this situation this morning, we received a message News Nation heard directly from the sheriff. He said, again, just following a lead. As for what could happen tonight, that remains to be seen. Right now, it is very quiet here outside of the sheriff's department.
Okay, Jessica, we'll check back in with you if anything develops. And of course, just like last night, if there's some kind of SWAT operation, we'll be ready to roll. Jessica, thank you. Joining me now is Bob Krieger. He is a former Pima County SWAT. You were the sergeant of the SWAT team, right? You were pretty much over the SWAT team.
Commander, yeah.
Commander, yes.
For the last 5 years,
It's
off
nice,
and on.
It's nice to see you again, Bob.
Thank you.
Walk us through a little bit of what you know about this operation last night. And are you surprised? The sheriff texted me this morning that there were no arrests.
I'll start by saying I'm not surprised there were no arrests. That's not uncommon in an operation like that. SWAT serves a couple different functions. First and foremost is to make the scene safe for the investigators. They are not really concerned with evidence collection, things like that. They're concerned with taking everyone into custody, doing that safely, and giving the investigators a safe scene to work with. So it's not uncommon to go through an operation like that. They were there to collect evidence and interview people, and that all got accomplished. So last night was a success.
And that'll just take time now, because I'm assuming, just like we saw at the situation near the border, you know, they take electronics. I'd imagine all that's going to take some time. We're not going to see an immediate arrest.
Exactly. Unless there was evidence gained that was rock solid and it was time for the arrest, then they would do it then. But again, not uncommon. Sometimes these, as we can tell now, we're in the second week. These investigations can take a long time to get what they need to get the probable cause to make an arrest.
So many people around the country and really around the world are following this case and have questions about this case. And we've received a couple of videos from people who had questions for you, specifically one about cameras in the area. I want to play this, and then I want to get your reaction.
Can you provide any clarity on the traffic camera situation there in Tucson
Tucson, because I've heard that they don't really have traffic cams that the police can rely on in this investigation. And second question, do they have license plate readers in that area?
Okay, you're the perfect guy for this.
So on the first part of that question, we do not have many red light cameras or anything like that. There are a handful within the city limits. We had them years ago. The voters chose they didn't want them, so they were removed. So as far as the camera technology goes, specific to those cameras, there aren't a lot of them. License plate readers, there are definitely more of those. There are also private folks who are running license plate readers as kind of a side hustle.
Really? That's interesting.
Oh yeah, they'll work them to find stolen cars for repossessions, things like that. So that's not uncommon. The technology is out there, and there are other systems available to us as far as cameras go. The Department of Transportation. There are companies out there that we can work with that have cameras that can provide us information. The bad thing is if we don't know what we're looking for, the cameras are just showing license plates and cars.
Right.
So we need more to go on. But if they can get something, then the technology is also there to start looking through those cameras and seeing, license plate ABC 123 went through it this time.
Yeah, and until you're here, you don't realize just how much brush there is. There's the cactuses. There's bushes. I mean, and the houses are set back off the road.
Yes.
So even if someone had a Ring camera, it seems difficult that they would actually capture something on the roads in these neighborhoods.
In neighborhoods like this, yes, they're not the cookie cutter type neighborhoods where you can see right behind us, nothing but brush. And so until you're on property, walking up to the door, there's not a lot that you're going to see. You might get a little bit of movement at the street, but unfortunately, a lot of times in these types of neighborhoods, you're not getting what you really want.
Something else I wanted to ask you about, Bob, is before we went out and witnessed what SWAT was doing last night, which was really impressive, by the way. You're the Pima team. I mean, I know you were the boss of the team, so I mean, it's impressive to see them in action.
Good to hear.
But I heard a plane in the air, and I was told that Pima County has a surveillance plane. Do you think that was associated with the operation, and is that plane assisting right now?
The Sheriff's Department does have a good aerial fleet. We have a good unit. We do have a plane. I don't know if it was up specifically last night, especially with the weather, but it very well could have been. It works hand in hand with our patrol. It works hand in hand on almost every SWAT mission that we would run, because having that aerial platform, again, going back to the primary goal of making that scene safe for the investigators, it's up there. It's looking for people who might be running, leaving the scene. If it was a plane and it saw a vehicle leave prior to the SWAT team getting there, they probably followed it, and that's what helped with the traffic stop on that vehicle.
Do you think, Bob, that we're getting closer? I mean, the hope is, we're all out here. We want Nancy to be found.
I hope we're getting closer, and I think we are. Every day, there's more information coming in. The investigators are able to follow up on more. Sooner or later, they're going to get that piece of evidence, no matter what it is. And it's just going to take time with as many pieces out there to sift through it. So the short answer is, yes, we are getting closer. That endpoint might not be for a while, or it could be this evening.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time when we get there.
I guess we'll see what happens tonight. And I said we'll be ready to roll again, just like we were last night. So thank you, Bob.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
your time very much. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Okay, coming up still, we've got a lot to get to. We're taking...
You guys are asking about updates. The DNA evidence, which hopefully I'll get to, there hasn't been, they're saying there's like updates, but I don't see anything that's promising, but you guys can judge for yourself. I'll play it for you. I didn't see anything promising, and it's not looking good for this lady. My heart feels heavy for her.
Through the terrain here on the ground in Arizona, and it is difficult terrain. It's probably not exactly what you're picturing. Why it could be causing problems for investigators. Also, did the person at Nancy Guthrie's door have an accomplice? Was it more than one person? We're getting some new insight into that. Plus, could DNA be the thing that cracks this case wide open? Don't go anywhere. We're right back after this.
Yeah, Dr. Manhattan, I'm assuming the worst just because of the crime and her
So
age.
everyday law
Doesn't look
enforcement
good.
has been out here in Tucson searching for any clues or any sign of Nancy Guthrie. And the searches continue right now. And remember, Nancy Guthrie could be alive. They've been searching with helicopters, foot searches. But I want to give you a better idea of why this is so complicated. I want to put this map up to really show you what it's like out here. Take a look at this. Nancy's house is right here in the Catalina foothills. You've seen us outside her house literally every single day for almost 2 weeks now. But these neighborhoods here, they're different. They're interesting. You don't really understand until you're here. The homes, they're tucked back. You can see it here from our drone. And these aren't just out and back streets. Here's video of what driving around Nancy's neighborhood actually looks like. It is hilly. It is curvy. There's lots of ways in and out. I've been here almost 2 weeks and I still almost get lost. I have to use my GPS every single day to get out of here. And then there's Annie's house. That's, of course, Nancy's other daughter. That's where she came from that night. That's about 10 to 15 minutes from here, depending on traffic, closer to 10 minutes. The glove that investigators picked up during one of their searches, that was found here in this location. That's about 1.5 miles from Nancy's home. So all this is pretty close together. And then there was that SWAT operation last night. That was not far either. That was just about 2 miles away from where I'm standing right now, where that raid happened. So you can see it's a pretty big area here, and there's a lot of things to keep track of. And it's wild out here. I mean, this is the desert. This is desert terrain. It makes things even more tricky for investigators. Take a look at this.
This is the terrain where we're used to walking through and trafficking, trying to track traffickers of human smuggling and drug smuggling. But the way this is called the wash. A lot of people don't use that terminology. And as we walk through here, you'll see this is kind of like a trail where you know which way to walk in there. You're going to have some broken branches in this area.
Everything is like got thorns too, huh?
Everything's got thorns. And I think the difference is people hear desert landscape and they almost think that it's nothing but sand and you could see so this is basically the brush. And as you walk further in,
thank you.
These are called, this is the actual wash. These are the washes. We haven't walked too far, but if you go this way, and here I will show you, if it's dark out here, or even now, vehicles can go through this neighborhood and they're not going to see anybody in this area of the brush. Now, this is called the wash. When it rains, you get water through here, of course, but they're dry most of the time. So you can walk through these areas and pull up behind some of these houses.
You could drive into some of these areas.
There's some areas where you'd be able to drive. It'd be more difficult, but you could definitely drive maybe like a quad through here. And there's a house right there. And if we continue walking through here, I mean, you'll see there's a house there. You probably couldn't see it when we were in the brush, but you're going through all this area. And at night, somebody that would know the terrain can walk through here and literally, you wouldn't know. We're probably, what 20 feet from the road. And from where we're standing, we can't see my truck. With some of these cameras, you would not be able to see the street.
The topography, as you can see, we're heading into the Zoro Monument, is another challenge. The desert is not necessarily, it's beautiful, but it's not always friendly. There are a number of risks out there with thorny bushes and cactus and poisonous animals.
Now imagine this at night when it is completely dark and there's no street lights out here. There's absolutely no street lights. So that just adds to how difficult it is. And if you do have some type of ring camera and it's dark and you have this, you're really not going to get much out of a ring camera.
The topography is extreme. We're at 3,000 feet in elevation, right where we're at right now. And there's a mountain in front of us that goes up to close to 7,000 feet. And there's a mountain to the north of us that goes almost 10,000 feet. And everything in between creates a topography that's a challenge.
Ready for they bring her into Mexico?
Or bring her into Mexico, or even, I'll be honest.
Are there ways to do that though without being seen?
So there's areas obviously that are porous still within the border. Our border is more secure than it's ever been. We've all heard that, and it is true. But in Arizona, there's still porous areas where you could possibly head south, especially at nighttime.
It's highly likely she could be in Mexico. It's my opinion that might be one of the places that would logically make some sense to deal with her until what they want, what they're demanding, is satisfied.
And the Mexico possibility is really, really frightening when you think about it. And by the way, it is pitch black out here. All right, coming up next, was there more than one person at Nancy Guthrie's home that night? Could there have been more people involved actually at the house? A former special agent with the FBI joins me live on why she thinks that could actually be the case, and she is answering your questions right after the break.
You guys are talking about the money that this mommy has and who she is. Obviously, this is a high-profile case.
All right, you are looking
gonna be.
live right now at the Pima County Sheriff's Office. We are keeping a close eye on any potential action. Remember, last night we were out with the SWAT team for most of the night. Will it happen again tonight? We don't know. Anything can happen. This is an urgent search. And remember, Nancy Guthrie could be alive. So we've got to keep an eye on everything happening in real time. Remember, this whole investigation brought a firestorm upon the man in charge in Tucson, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos. Nanos has been in the spotlight before. He helped lead the Gabby Gifford shooting case. It was here years ago. But there are moments, especially in the early days of this investigation, that have gotten attention, and it has not always been good attention. Take a look at this.
The reports of blood in the house, can you confirm that at this hour?
No, I'm not sure where that came from. Maybe I said something, and trust me, I've said a lot, talked to a lot of people, and some of those comments may have, on my fault, not the media, may have been distorted or at least taken out of context.
When you're taken from your bed and you don't want to go somewhere, that's an abduction.
The sheriff's department now saying he meant that figuratively and did not mean that she was literally taken from her bed.
I'm not used to everybody hanging on to my words and then trying to hold me accountable for what I say. Boy, if I said I absolutely misspoke. I've never thought she was or wasn't targeted. Mistakes are going to be made, and if I made them, mea culpa, it won't be the first mistake I've ever made.
All right, there's also been claims that Sheriff Nanos has not been too forthcoming with the FBI, that there's something that it's something he's denied to News Nation, but we have heard from FBI sources that there's been an issue with communication and there's been information that has been withheld. I want to bring in my next guest, former FBI Special Agent Maureen O'Connell. Maureen, it is always very, very nice to see you. I want to start with a question that we have for you that we got from one of our viewers, Tom. I want to play this and I want to get your answer on the other side. Listen to this, Maureen.
With all this controversy involving who's in charge and who's this and that, if I were the family, I would hire private investigators to go into this. Now, say that is the case. If that does happen, then what are some of the things that private investigators might be able to do that perhaps the federal government and the local county sheriff's department might not be able to do?
What do you think about this, Maureen? Because there was a report that the Guthries had hired a private investigator. Then there was a report that that actually wasn't true. So we're not really sure. Do you think a private investigator, we're now 2 weeks in, could help?
In an investigation like this, no, I don't. If you want to hire a private investigator to possibly be an intermediary or in some way, shape, or form, I guess I have seen that done before, but I think in this particular instance, when you have so many people and two different big entities that are there, let's just try to keep it as simple as we can. There's a lot going on, and although communication may be an issue, comms is always an issue in a big case. You just can't help it. You have all these siloed investigations happening within the FBI. So they're doing the cast or the cellular analysis. They're doing a lot of stuff. Some of the stuff that's going to the lab is going to the FBI lab. The tips and leads and how they're triaged, that's being done by the FBI. And who's sending out leads, who's setting the leads, and who's taking the leads back when we're done. That's probably all being done by the FBI and the analysts and the task force. So to add more people to that, first of all, they're not sworn. They can't be held to the same standard. They don't have access to any of the systems, and there are a lot of systems being used and utilized in an investigation of this size and of this magnitude.
Yeah, it makes sense. It seems like it could complicate things at this point. I want to ask you about last night. I was out there. We saw the SWAT team. They went in, then the FBI rolled in. There was a ton of them, and I am told that they likely took DNA from one of these subjects that they were interested in. And we know, Maureen, that they have DNA from inside Nancy's house, DNA that doesn't connect back to Nancy and does not connect back to anyone within her circle, so a stranger's DNA. How long would it take for them to test the DNA from last night and see if it's a match from the DNA here at the house?
It's not going to take that long. They're going to send the DNA. The sheriff is probably going to send that DNA to that private lab in Florida, which specializes in touch DNA. And they can do a one-to-one comparison with the known DNA that they have and this person to see if it matches. What they cannot do is they don't have the ability to run it through CODIS. So it's going to have to go probably to the FBI lab at that point so that we can keep this lab situation down to a manageable number. And then the FBI or the sheriff's department can run it through CODIS, the national database for DNA, and then determine if that, will hit with anyone else. But the DNA sample that the FBI is, or that the private lab is in possession of, if they have sent it back to the lab, to the sheriff already, it's already in CODIS. If they haven't, then they're going to have to send it back to the sheriff or to the FBI to get it uploaded into CODIS and then compared.
Maureen, we've all seen the horrifying, frightening photos from the front of the house that the FBI was able to get off the Google Nest camera of the man, covered from head to toe. Do you think, and I've thought a lot about this, do you think someone else involved, and I don't mean just someone else to plan this thing, I mean someone else who was actually at the house that night and also went into the house to kidnap Nancy?
Well, obviously we're not sure, but I would say it's probably likely there was someone driving the car. And the car could have been right there in the driveway. It could have been halfway through the circle driveway. We don't have the entire video. I'm sure the FBI has much more video. Did this person attempt to open the front door here? Did they have a key to the front door? Did they go around to the back door? Do we have that video? There's just a lot of unanswered questions, but for me, it would make a lot more sense if you had at least two people involved in this conspiracy and the other person was driving the vehicle.
Why do you think his backpack is so full, Maureen? It looks stuffed. I mean, what do you think could be in there?
Violent criminals, he's obviously got a proclivity to violence, and that's one of the questions when you're trying to analyze the offender of a situation like this. He's got a proclivity and a predisposition to violence because she was bleeding on the front steps when she left. So there's just no question there. That is an actual fact that we know. So, and he's got that gun on his waistband, but with regard to that backpack, could he have a tarp? Could he have restraints? Could he have tape? Those would be the things I would expect to find in something like that. He could have rope. Who knows? But this is why when municipal law enforcement officers pull people over and they see kits like this in their trunk, or burglary tools or whatever, it gives them probable cause to search or detain or even arrest.
And just real quick, Maureen, there's something I learned about that hasn't been reported yet. We saw a helicopter very low over Nancy's house and in the surrounding area the other day. And I'm told there was something called a signal sniffer on one of the skids of the helicopter, a very, very small box, like less than 7 inches long, that could actually detect Nancy's pacemaker. And again, I have not heard this reported before, but we were able to confirm it. And it just made me think about all the technology that the FBI is likely using now that we don't know about. I mean, is there AI involved? What else do you think other tools they may be using that we just don't know?
They'll be using every tool we have to try to bring Nancy home. With regard to this particular tool, I don't know. But I do know that the pacemaker sends off a very short distance alert or whatever. So they're going to have to get really close. How close were they to the ground?
They were close, Maureen. Yeah, that's what was so interesting. When we saw the helicopter, they were so low, and we were all talking about it. Like, what are they doing? Why are they hovering so low in different spots around the yard? Come to find out, they actually had this signal sniffer sent in special for this. It's, you know, it's like a special piece of equipment that had to be sent in, which it makes sense now why they were hovering so low. Maureen O'Connell, I always appreciate talking to you and your expertise. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Brian. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. You always do a great job, Maureen. All right, coming up next, inside the life of Nancy Guthrie. We know she's Savannah Guthrie's mother, but her story and her life, it is so much more than that.
No, John, they didn't find her.
Because we're so focused on the investigation, but she was a wonderful woman. She is a wonderful woman, and we're going to dig into that coming up.
I'm just giving you guys a timeline of kind of what happened, but no, they didn't find her, unfortunately.
Our mom is a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman of goodness and light. She is full of kindness and knowledge. Talk to her and you'll see.
Gosh, these videos are so heartbreaking from Savannah Guthrie, heartbreaking from Savannah Guthrie and her family. They've just been awful and just gut-wrenching to watch as they reach day 14 with little answers about what happened to their mom. I want to bring in News Nation's Marnie Hughes now. She is with me. And Marnie, I've been thinking a lot about this. I get so wrapped up in the investigation and trying to chase every lead, but I try to remind myself every day about Nancy. You know, and she was so loved in this community. She lived in this house since the 90s.
Yeah.
You know, she was much more than just Savannah Guthrie's mom here.
Right.
You know?
I mean, I think the reason there's so much attention, Brian, to
Wow,
this
Dr.
case is
Manhattan.
because she's Savannah's mom, right? Savannah's a celebrity. She's a journalist that we know. But as we cover missing cases, there are thousands of families out there who have a missing person. And the one common thread I find as I talk to all of these families all across the country every single week is they want people to know their person. They feel unheard, and they all hold on to hope, just like the Guthrie family is doing. And as we have looked and looked for Nancy for the last 2 weeks, I think about her grandkids right now and what they must be going through. We see Savannah, she's used to being in front of a camera, and she is grief-stricken. I think about those grandkids. I think about her friends who know her, who are staying quiet in the shadows right now, but they're watching this search day in, day out, and they are hopeful. And that is what all of these families, just like the Guthries, are hopeful. We talked to a friend of Nancy's today who is a colleague and a friend working at the University of Arizona, where she worked, and she said she was smart, she is insightful, she is wise. She's one of those quiet leaders that would work behind the scenes. She worked in the journalism department at the University of Arizona and really was impactful, even was instrumental in helping plan the curriculum, which I think is a great connection with Savannah. Wise and kind, and what we found, Brian, is that is a characteristic she has carried with her throughout her entire life.
Savannah's mom.
Savannah, I'm gonna tell you. Are you kidding?
For years, we've heard the stories of Nancy's
Not
life
really,
told through the eyes
Sebastian.
of her youngest daughter, Savannah.
This is a real Kentucky recipe with just a touch of Arizona, because you know my mom and dad both grew up in Kentucky.
We did.
So it's perfect.
Nancy attended the University of Kentucky, where she wrote columns for the student-run newspaper and met her husband, Charles, on a blind date at a basketball game.
But the thing that I always remember is my mom said, my dad walked up to the door of her sorority and she looked at him and said, "That's the man I'm going to marry."
Nancy and Charles got married in 1963, had 3 children, Cameron, Annie, and Savannah, a family focused on love and faith. Nancy has always been active at church.
The greatest gift my mother gave me was faith.
That was put to the test when tragedy struck the Guthrie family in 1988. Charles died of a heart attack. Savannah says it was her mom who put the pieces back together.
She has met unthinkable challenges in her life with grit, without self-pity, with determination, and always, always with unshakable faith.
Nancy went back to work to provide for her children, going on to have a career at the University of Arizona. For
Wow.
decades, she lived and loved the Catalina foothills.
It's so wonderful. Just the air, the quality of life is laid back and gentle.
A local journalist in the area says here, Nancy Guthrie is revered. Just look at the growing support from neighbors and strangers in Tucson, all the way to her church in New York.
We've put this service together filled with songs and scripture that we know are near and dear both to Savannah and Nancy's hearts.
A loyal friend who never missed time with her social circle, playing games, reading, and laughing. And a mother and grandmother whose loved ones are desperate to get her home.
We are always going to be merely human, just normal human people who need our mom.
Your children will not rest until we are together again.
Gosh, those videos, I mean, they're just so raw. They're still so hard to watch. We have another viewer question that I think is important, especially because of all the missing cases that you cover. Let's listen to this.
I'm wondering how reporters are deciding which information is useful for the public interest and for the interest of the victim and the family of the victim.
It's a good question,
Wow,
Marnie. I mean,
it's a great
how do you
question.
answer? Because we think about this every day.
Yeah, well, and I think this is such a good example of the struggle between social media and kind of citizen journalists versus those of us who have been doing this for a lot of years. And we really rely on careful, confirmed information. So for that reason, we always work with police, hand in hand on all our missing cases. When we get tips from the public or when we talk to family, we work with police. That said, private investigators are extremely helpful. And then I also will say powerful family instinct. The people who know them the best know the most.
Thank you, Marnie.
Sebastian, it's been about 2 weeks. Let me address some of these theories. Why y'all asking about my hair? Let me get to some of these theories.
We just try to never interfere with the investigation also.
Yeah.
I mean, whereas
Hang on, let me find it for you. Hold on, you guys, because there's been a lot of theories and controversies around this. Yes, Sebastian, it's been about 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Give me a second, you guys. Let me find something for you. Hopefully,
he said these citizen journalists.
Wait. Hopefully, I can find it for you. Let me go on mute. Give me 1 second. It's gonna get quiet for a second. I'll be right back. Okay. Hang on, let me try to share my screen with you. Wait, how do I? Hang on.
A heartbreaking new video. It is now day 16 in the desperate search for 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. No arrest, no clear suspect, and swirling, conflicting reports about what may have motivated her abduction from her home on February 1st. And we just got new information in about the clothing that armed, masked person was wearing on Nancy Guthrie's door. And this new information could be huge in solving this case. We're on the case, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Hey guys, real quick, before we start this episode of On the Case, one of the most watched shows on YouTube, I want to talk about our partner and sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest personal injury law firm. They're a firm with more than 1,000 attorneys who have sheriff is ruling people out. The sheriff writes, quote, 100,000 clients. An 84-year-old woman battling serious health issues, a woman who depends on daily medication to survive. I want to show you what the Pima County Sheriff's Department just posted Monday afternoon. We don't have suspects in this case, but now for the first time, the sheriff is ruling people out. The sheriff writes, quote, to be clear, the Guthrie family, to include all siblings and spouses, has been cleared as possible suspects in this case. The family has been nothing but cooperative and gracious and are victims in this case. The sheriff, Chris Nanos, goes on to say, quote, to suggest otherwise is not only wrong, it's cruel. The Guthrie family are victims, plain and simple. Please, I'm begging you, the media, to honor your profession and report with some sense of compassion and professionalism. Early on in this investigation, there were reports that Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law may be a prime suspect in this case because it was believed that he is the last person to see Nancy Guthrie before she was taken from her home. It's been reported that he was the one who drove Nancy Guthrie back to her house. Now, previously, the sheriff said that no one would be cleared until an arrest had been made in this case. It's unclear what changed that and what prompted him to make this statement now. There are several theories that have been speculated online, and one of them is that whoever took Nancy, that wasn't the intent when they entered her home, that the intent was actually to burglarize it, to steal stuff. Then something happened and they were forced to take Nancy Guthrie. Now, law enforcement, they have not come out and officially shared what they think the intent was of the person or people who took Nancy Guthrie, and it's unclear if they even know that at this point, at least from what they're saying to us officially. Now, there is a media report, though, that's getting a lot of attention, and it's getting pushback from law enforcement, and it claims that Nancy Guthrie is the victim of what was supposed to be a burglary at her home. We will dive into that new report in just a moment, but before we do that, I want to talk about what Savannah Guthrie posted on her Instagram Sunday night. It is a new video. It is raw, it is emotional, and much of her message is to her mom's kidnapper.
I wanted to come on, and it's been 2 weeks since our mom was taken, and I just wanted to come on and say that we still have hope, and we still believe. And I wanted to say to whoever has her or knows where she is that it's never too late. And you're not lost or alone. And it is never too late to do the right thing. And we are here. We believe. And we believe in the essential goodness of every human being. And it's never too late.
And you just can see, you don't have to be a body language expert to see this, but just how exhausted, drained, and emotional Savannah Guthrie looks. And it is understandable when you think of what her family is going through right now. It is clear that this family continues to hold on to hope that Nancy will come home. This newest message, it seems raw, it seems unscripted, and it's certainly a different tone from her last video that you might remember. It came in around the time of a deadline that was included in an alleged ransom note sent to media outlets like TMZ. This was it.
Hi there, everybody. I wanted to come on and just share a few thoughts as we enter into another week of this nightmare. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for all of the prayers and the love that we have felt, my sister and brother and I, and that our mom has felt. Because we believe that somehow, some way, she is feeling these prayers and that God is lifting her even in this moment and in this darkest place. We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help. Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock, trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken and we don't know where. And we need your help. So I'm coming on just to ask you, not just for your prayers, but no matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, If you see anything, if you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. We are at an hour of desperation, and we need your help.
For as public as this case has been, it is unclear what the Guthrie family knows and if they know of any possible leads that law enforcement is following. And it's also unclear what investigators closest to this case are following right now. Of course, we've heard from the sheriff, but other than that, there's still a lot that we don't know when it comes to the inner circle of this investigation. But we are learning about a potential clue that has to do with the person seen wearing a mask, a jacket, gloves, and a backpack on Nancy Guthrie's front steps around the time she vanished. The Pima County Sheriff says the clothing that you see on the person in that video, they believe that it was possibly bought at Walmart. Now, these clothes are not exclusively available at Walmart. They're calling this a possibility. But when you say Walmart, you add that clothing to the backpack that the FBI says is one exclusively sold at Walmart, a 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack backpack. And again, the only place you can get it is Walmart. Then you have Fox News that came out with a report saying that the holster that you see on the man's waist, that appears to be a holster. It goes for $10, so it's pretty cheap, and it's sold at some Walmarts, and they found it in stock at 5 Walmarts in the Tucson area. So we'll see how that factors into trying to identify if the person we see in that video, did they buy these clothes and that backpack relatively recently, and that can help them track down who that person is. Now, let's get to this new report that came in that is getting a lot of attention. It's from the CBS affiliate in Phoenix. A reporter, Brianna Whitney, who is a true crime reporter there. She hosts a series called True Crime Arizona. She put out a story saying that she has an inside source telling her that law enforcement believe that Nancy Guthrie is the victim of a burglary gone wrong. And the intent of the person or people who went into her home, it wasn't to take Nancy Guthrie, it was to steal things, but something must have happened inside of the house that made her the victim of a botched burglary. This would be instead of a plan for them to show up and kidnap Nancy Guthrie all along. Now, that report, it's being disputed today by the Pima County Sheriff to an extent. This is what the sheriff told us. PCSD, Pima County Sheriff's Department, has never stated that this was a burglary gone wrong. Any reports indicating otherwise are inaccurate. This remains a very active investigation. Now, look, if you want to read into that statement a little bit more, it is pushing back on the report, and it's pushing back on the department ever stating that this was a burglary gone wrong, and to suggest that, they say, would be inaccurate, opposed to them saying the story itself is incorrect. Now, the FBI also spoke to Fox News, who reached out for comment, and the FBI said that they don't know where that story came from. So it appears the Bureau is also pushing back a bit as well. Now, some experts have suggested what that local news report out of Arizona is claiming, that whoever entered Nancy's home, they didn't intend to take her, but something must have happened inside, and it resorted to that. Some of the reasons they point to that, well, you think of the images like this one. This one was put out by TMZ. This is of a suspicious person caught on camera in the weeks surrounding Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. And there have been several of these that have been posted on social media, and many of them have nothing to do with the Guthrie case. In this one, we see a man on January 23rd walking backwards intentionally on the front steps of a house 6.5 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. TMZ blurred the man's face, but they say that he has facial hair, and it's similar to the man you see in the surveillance video that was released by the FBI from Nancy Guthrie's house. Now, TMZ says that the FBI is following this as a lead, but it's unclear, again, if it has anything to do with the Guthrie case. This video was taken out around 5 o'clock in the morning, and then apparently a dog barks, and the man takes off running. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is that Nancy Guthrie, based off the timeline given to us, around 2 o'clock in the morning, 2:30, her pacemaker disconnects from her iPhone. So this apparently happened in the early hours of the morning. And we're just seeing videos where you see other examples of people showing up on the doorsteps of folks in Tucson, Arizona in the early hours of the morning. Now, on top of that, we've had experts talk to us about how when it comes to kidnappings, An 84-year-old woman with health issues needing medication daily is just a very vulnerable target that kidnappers often do not target for ransom. So that could potentially lead you in the direction of the speculation that this was a burglary gone wrong. But on the other hand, we have talked to law enforcement experts who say it's very rare for a home burglary to happen in the middle of the night because that's when people are home and they're sleeping. And if you were to go into somebody's house and you want to take stuff, having a confrontation with a person who may wake up is the last thing you want in that situation. It's typically commercial buildings that become targets at night of burglars. And when you look at the suspicious person on Nancy Guthrie's front steps, it does appear that backpack is full as they approach the door, which is another thing that you would not expect from someone who is planning to take items from a home. But again, that CBS affiliate in Phoenix says their inside sources are telling them that this was a burglary that went very wrong. And then you have the Pima County Sheriff pushing back on that report. So let's talk a little bit more about the evidence that we know about in this case. We just talked about that information coming in about Walmart and where the clothes potentially could have been bought that we see on that person on Nancy Guthrie's front steps. We're also still waiting for this DNA to come back related to a glove that was found about 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. The FBI sent us a statement that says the glove that was found, it was found in a field on the side of a road. The agents say as they searched the miles surrounding Nancy's home, they found 16 gloves. I did find it interesting that they said that the majority of the gloves were from searchers who had just thrown them on the ground. But then there's one glove they found that seems to be offering at least a glimmer of hope in this case. That glove, quote, this is from the FBI, appears to match the gloves of the subject in the surveillance video. Now, when you hear that line, it certainly grabs your attention. The FBI says the Pima County Sheriff's Department sent the glove to a private lab that it uses in Florida. It was sent on Thursday last week. It was tested on Friday last week. Then preliminary results came back on Saturday. And now the FBI is waiting for quality control and official confirmation. And when that comes back, the FBI says it will then put the DNA profile into CODIS, which is their national DNA database. And if the DNA is of a person who's had any sort of previous run-in with the law, it should have a match. That database is full of people who have been convicted of crimes, arrested, or detained. Now, the FBI has not gone into more detail on whether there's anything specific that brings that glove to Nancy Guthrie's home beyond the fact that it looks like the one worn in the video by that masked, armed individual. And we should be clear that it is possible that the glove was just the result of someone littering. And also beyond that, even if there's a match in CODIS, you know, it was brought up that, well, that could just mean that there was someone with a criminal record who was roughly 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home at some point. It may not be connected to this case, but you have to admit it's a clue that could mean something in this investigation now as we enter week 3. It does appear this glove is a commonly used nitrile glove that's then put over another glove. When you look at that video, we have not heard from the FBI whether they found Nancy Guthrie's DNA on the glove. Now, we do know that investigators found DNA other than Nancy's or people close to her at her house, but it's unclear who that belongs to. It's also unclear if it is someone who entered her home with bad intentions, or maybe it's someone who was at her house to help. Maybe it was hired help like a gardener or a pool person who reportedly submitted DNA samples. Now, the sheriff has not unveiled what evidence they found inside Nancy Guthrie's home. We do know that there was blood on the front steps, and that blood came back to match Nancy Guthrie, as we see it here in this video from News Nation. The sheriff has also said that law enforcement don't have suspects in this case, but he did have an interesting line that I think we need to talk about, that he said after the raid of a home about 2 miles from Nancy's house on Friday night, there was also that dramatic traffic stop. There was a man who was detained and released, and the sheriff told media outlets that the person pulled over in a traffic stop at a Culver's was a person of interest in this case. He first said it to Fox News, but that person has been released. Now, the CBS affiliate in Phoenix is reporting that DNA is being tested from that vehicle. Now, that raid moved quickly on Friday night. We saw a SWAT team move in. There was a federal search warrant of the home, which was in an upscale neighborhood a couple miles from Nancy Guthrie's house. NBC News, though, is reporting that authorities are leaning away from anyone who has been detained at this point as potential suspects.
I just wanted to come on and say that we still have hope and we still believe.
Now, it does appear in Savannah's new video that she is holding on to hope that her mom is still out there and this story could finally have a happy ending after such a nightmare. The sheriff told the New York Times that the investigation will continue no matter what. And he said this, and this was the line that did get a bit of attention over the weekend when it comes to bringing this case to an end. Quote, maybe it's an hour from now, maybe it's weeks or months or years from now, but we won't quit. We're going to find Nancy. We're going to find this guy. That's Sheriff Chris Nanos to the New York Times. Now, another development that happened today that I think we should talk about, TMZ continues to say that they're receiving emails from someone who claims to know where Nancy Guthrie is and who took her. Now, it is unclear if these emails are real, but Harvey Levin from TMZ said today they received a new letter from this person who's been demanding payment to provide information. This person has emailed 3 times, initially asking for 1 Bitcoin for the information they say they have, according to TMZ. Today's letter reportedly said, quote, I know what I saw 5 days ago south of the border, and I was told to shut up. So I know who he is, and that was definitely Nancy with them, end quote. Now, the person sending these emails, they appear to be different from whoever was behind those 2 alleged ransom notes that TMZ and local television stations in Tucson received, demanding Bitcoin with 2 deadlines that have since passed. It's unclear how serious the FBI is taking this person who's continuing to email TMZ. Now, the FBI is offering $100,000 for information that leads to Nancy Guthrie or the person or people who took her from her home on February 1st. If you have information on Nancy Guthrie, you can contact the Pima County Sheriff at 520-351-4900. You can also contact the FBI. Their number is 1-800-CALL-FBI or go to tips.fbi.gov. Join us now to talk more about this case, retired FBI Special Agent Greg Rogers. Thank you for being with us here on Law and Crime. This debate today, after this report came out of Arizona by a television station, that they have a source saying that the theory is that this was a botched burglary and Nancy Guthrie was not initially a target. The sheriff and the FBI, they seem to be pushing back on that a little bit. What do you make based off what we know at this point about what potentially happened here?
I sort of discredit the botched burglary theory myself for reasons being that when you it was even though I think it's obvious from the video cam that the individual that approached the front door made numerous mistakes, had really poor preoperative planning, but your average, a burglary is kicking in a door, stealing. What is it they were going to take? I mean, does the individual that's giving that tip saying that they believe there was something really valuable in the Guthrie home? That's just a strange neighborhood to do like a burglary. They weren't going to just go in there and steal TVs and things like that. So I really doubt that. I don't think that's a viable theory. And burglars don't traditionally kidnap the people who are in the residence. I mean, they tragically, and I don't mean to sound cynical, but most burglars are just going to incapacitate the person that's in the residence. They're going to harm them, leave them there. I mean, they don't have any interest in taking a person with them. They've got something they want to steal. They steal it and they leave.
Yeah, and I know this television station, they just put out a statement saying they stand by their reporting. So we'll see. It's one of those things like we'll see when this all shakes out,
right,
like what actually it is, and we can only know so much from the outside. We've had experts who have said, and people may not realize this, that a home burglary typically doesn't happen at night because people are at home and they're
right,
sleeping. And the last thing you want, if you want to steal stuff, is to have a confrontation with the person in a home.
exactly,
where you see some of the commercial buildings are targets. But when I hear that, I also wonder, especially because we've heard, and even, in talking now, like this guy made a lot of mistakes when he showed up at the door. Like he didn't look like he was this sophisticated criminal mastermind, at least on the surface. Like, How often do people like that know that, though, and think that through and be like, well, there's probably someone in the house sleeping?
Unfortunately, there are professionals that that's what they do. They go
Right.
from city to city, they burglarize, and then they move on, and they're actually very good at what they do. And it's all just a bet. But I mean, the bet is, it's pretty obvious the chances of someone being home at that hour are pretty good. If you just do a little bit of surveillance, you would know when she wasn't there. I mean, it'd be easy to watch her drive away, and then you just go in and take whatever it is you're going to take. There weren't a lot of things taken from the residence, it's my understanding. So it's unless there was something that no one knows about, some real valuable item that maybe she had, or a safe or something like that, and that was all they took, that'd be one thing. But it's the home wasn't burglarized in any sort of traditional burglary fashion. There were a lot of very valuable items still there. And they were there. These guys were in that residence for 40 some minutes.
Right.
I mean, so they were there a long time. They could have cleaned house if they wanted to, if that was the intent.
Right. You have the timeline where I think it's a little after 1:00 in the morning, 1:30, where the doorbell camera disconnects. And then at 45 minutes later, 40 minutes later or so, her pacemaker disconnects from the iPhone. The other piece of new news coming in, because we knew that the backpack was one that is exclusively sold at Walmart.
Right.
The type that he has. It's the only place you can get it. But now the sheriff says the clothing that this person was wearing. And I wonder if that's like not just a beanie that you cut holes in, but it's an actual, you wonder how many people in Tucson, Arizona are buying those with, how the weather is. It's not like he's in, Denver or something like that, but the fact that it's a possibility that these are all Walmart items, what could that mean to this investigation?
Oh, that's huge. That's we have solved a number of cases. The most important one that I can recall, we solved a serial killer murder case, Joseph Duncan in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. He'd killed a family and killed a number of children on a countrywide spree. And it was because he left some items at one of the residences where the UPC numbers were tracked back to a Home Depot. And then once you figure out which location they used, there's video cams, you've got, you're running receipts, seeing if they used a credit card. You can literally track who purchased that specific item. The inventory systems at Walmart's and, any, Home Depots, those sorts of things are very, very detailed. So you can track it right down to who purchased it. And if they didn't use a card, if they were being careful and they were, trying to be careful and they were using cash, you can still detail exactly when that item was sold, and you can look at the video cams. And we've solved a number of cases that way. That's a very, very important finding. I'm hopeful that that's going to be really helpful.
Yeah, me too. And I'm because I know when the backpack story came out, you look at that and you're like, well, when was that backpack purchased? Like, how likely is it that, it could be a backpack that was bought years ago? I don't know how long it's only been available at Walmart, but then it's like the clothes as well. And it's like, if that all lines up, that this one person bought these clothes, like that could be huge to this case. I know yesterday, another kind of big clue that came out, or at least it seems like that on the surface to us on the outside, is this glove. And they found a glove about 2 miles from the house. They say, and the line that gets everybody's attention is that it appears to be the glove that, matches what we see in the person on the front steps. Now, does that just mean it's like a kind of like a latex style glove? I mean, anybody could have those, but based off what we know about it, the DNA testing, what can we expect if that comes back as a profile that they can put into CODIS, that database?
Oh, that may be the biggest lead we have right now. If that's actually the glove, I can assure you people are working 24/7. They've identified the DNA already. And so they'll run that through CODIS. Unfortunately, what most people don't realize is unless you have a criminal history, or if you've been in the military, or if you've been a federal agent, your DNA is available because you've been tested. But it's the vast majority of the American public hasn't been. So they'll be running, if he's not in CODIS, they're going to be running that through historical databases. We just, another case that was just solved that way was the Kohlberger case in Idaho, where he killed those kids at the university in Moscow. And that case was made by DNA. He left a knife sheath in that had his father's DNA on it. That was tracked through a historical database. And then of course we find out that Brian Kohlberger's a student, at a university 10 miles away. So it's cases are solved that way. So I'm really hoping that those were the actual gloves. We'll find out. But again, that goes to show, you can make so many determinations based on the sophistication and the talent of the individual, whoever your subject is, based on their pre-operation and post-operation planning. And his pre-operation planning was terrible. He wears a backpack with reflective gear all over it. He doesn't come with anything to defeat the ring camera, even though he's got a backpack on. He could have had duct tape or spray paint. He could have defeated that camera in a second. Instead, he grabs a bush, which shows a real deficit of pre-planning. But post-op planning, to throw your gloves, which, I've seen things like that in a number of cases, but why are you going to do that? Why are you going to, it makes you think about the intellect of the individual you're working, because you could take those gloves with you to 100 miles away, or you could burn them. You could, but just to throw them and leave them somewhere, again, really makes you wonder about how savvy the person is that you're working.
Yeah, and just on that, and if those are the gloves, and it's after all of this, that's what they would do, it almost makes me wonder if that's actually how it's going to be, because it almost just seems for as unintelligent they may appear on camera, to just ditch your gloves about 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. It's
you can't explain that.
You can't explain it. If that's actually what happens, and we'll see. Even with that though, because you do look at the camera. I also think of his ski mask, and it's a burglar in a comedy movie would wear that ski mask. I mean, it shows a pretty good amount of his face, as opposed to some of the other options out there that will cover your mouth and the eyes will not be as it was just as if it was why would you, and I hope it helps lead to him. I'm happy he did, but it just seems like a very dumb mask to wear if you were going to go inside, someone's home. With that, knowing it's been, we're now entering the third week of this, with all the mistakes that you see on camera, are you surprised that this case isn't solved yet?
Yes. Yeah, I really am. And again, not wanting to sound cynical, but time is just so much of the essence, considering her health and other issues. But I think during the first week, I sort of was of the opinion that they're just being very careful, because there's these ransom letters. They're doing everything they can do to verify the authenticity of those, or if they're dealing with a real person. But the fact that there were there doesn't seem to have been any real solid verification of proof of life. There's not photos. They're not dealing personally with a kidnapper. That's very, very concerning. And I think it's telling also in the way that the family now, and the videos that they're putting out. And I can assure you those aren't done without a whole lot of planning and talking to profilers and other things about what should be said in these videos. They've gone from talking directly to a kidnapper to talking to the public. And those are radically different things.
Because we've seen, and you know, I was saying beforehand, like, you don't have to be an expert in body language to just know what Savannah got. You know, no one knows what she's going through, but to understand how distraught she is, like, that is incredibly real.
Right.
And it's a nightmare that nobody would want to go through. But when you look at the messaging where, you know, it was the family together really trying to humanize her, you know, the first couple of videos she posted, then you had the one around the deadline related to that alleged ransom note, where it was more this call out to the public.
Right.
And saying, you know, if you see something, say something. And it was almost, the tone there was more of like the Savannah Guthrie from the Today Show that we all know. But then this one last night, where she's saying you can do the right thing. Like, she is speaking to someone, either the person who, you know, kidnapped her mom, or someone who knows who did it, whoever it may be. Like, behind the scenes, for as authentic as videos like that look, like, what is the advice that the FBI can give a family member in that type of situation?
We have very talented psychological profilers that are working on this case. They're there, and those messages are specifically directed, and the language in them that is used is very well thought out. I mean, those messages just aren't, those aren't off the cuff. There's reasoning behind each one. I wouldn't be surprised if this one had a little bit to do with the individual that keeps sending messages and email, you know, to media outlets saying he knows who did it. I'm very suspicious of that, because that individual has had numerous occasions to really prove his veracity and hasn't done so. And by that, I mean, every time that the Bureau and the Pima County Sheriff's Office has detained anyone for questioning, that person could easily step up and say, that's not him.
Right.
You got the wrong person. You'd be knocking it out of the park. You would be really proving your veracity, and because you're saying you know who it is, but that's not happening. So, yeah.
I know in the most recent, because TMZ today said they got another, I think it's the fourth message now from this person, and it's very different the way that person, it's very different how that person is acting. The fourth email they get today from someone saying, it's not that they kidnapped Nancy Guthrie, but they know. And, you know, there's part of it you look at and you think that it's just a very different approach compared to the initial email, which was, I want the money. And then there's no response whatsoever. But in these emails, it just got me thinking, they talked about over the border and talking about Mexico. And in a past job, I drove through Nogales, like that entryway just south of Tucson. And like anybody who's ever driven across the border, like, it's a lot easier to go into Mexico than the process of answering questions, you know, on your way back. It's just, they're not checking vehicles. They're kind of just waving you over. It's like going through a toll. How likely is it that the FBI is working with Mexican authorities just to keep tabs on whether anything is popping up that someone, especially after this video was put out of the person on the front steps, may have booked it across the border in hopes that that could cover their tracks a little bit better?
Right. No, I can assure you that the federales, the Mexican federal police, our counterparts, have been involved in this case from the get-go. I mean, literally from the very beginning, because just because of the proximity, how close Tucson is to the border. And again, as you've said, it's very easy to drive into Nogales. That's not, but there are cameras, and there are plus, I can assure you from working years of cartel cases, the Mexican federal police have very close contact with the cartels. They have spoken with them about this, because if she were in Mexico, especially if she were in the Nogales area, the New Generation cartel is very active there. they would know. Nothing goes on in cartel territory that they don't know about. And I'm not saying I don't believe at all that this had anything to do with the cartels. I'm just saying they would know about it. And the Mexican federal police have been speaking with them about it, because nothing happens in an area they dominate that they don't know about.
Because I would wonder too, like just on the, because I initially had that thought, just as kind of the, non-law enforcement person, just kind of watching this case and seeing how close it is to the border. And you're like, is this a cartel thing? But then you think about it, it's like, if you're in the business of drugs, like the last thing you would want to do is bring this type of attention on yourself, right? Is that like a fair way to think of like taking an 84-year-old woman?
To the cartel, that's literally pocket change. I mean, this is not a, people talk all the time about the kidnappings that are cartel related in Mexico, but those have as much to do with politics as they have to do with, that's not a real money-making part of their business. They may kidnap a member of a family of someone who's trying to prosecute them, or of a politician that they want him to do certain things, just to teach them a lesson. So the cartels have not been coming into the United States and kidnapping prominent figures for $4 and $6 million. That's again, that's insignificant amount of money to them, and they don't want that kind of attention. They're already getting much more attention under the current administration than they want. So to do something like this would make no sense.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, it's something I think for a lot of us just on the outside, when you see, you just think of the border and, certainly some of the activity in Mexico, but, to your point, it just doesn't seem to make sense on that sense. A lot of questions unanswered now, entering the third week of this case. You still hope that there's a happy ending here in some ways. Greg Rogers, retired FBI special agent. Great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Okay, you guys, so that's a lot, and I will continue. Some people are asking why cover Nancy Guthrie, but there's a lot of us that do care. Now, I need to switch gears a little bit, you guys, so I give you a trigger warning. I've been treading lightly with these Epstein files, but is it okay if I touch on it a little bit? Ask you. So fair warning, I don't want to hear anything that's going to trigger you, and I'm just going to pray for this lady. It's not looking good. It's not looking good. It's 3 weeks going in, and let me see if I can find this for you. Give me a second. I don't even know if I can find this for you. Hold on. Give me a second.
Candidate Hillary Clinton says she believes Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and anyone with any information about the late sex offender Giuffre Epstein should testify before Congress. In a BBC interview, Mrs. Clinton also said she and her husband, Bill Clinton, want their forthcoming testimony about Epstein to be public. The couple had previously refused to testify to the Epstein inquiry and were threatened with contempt proceedings. Former President Bill Clinton appears several times in the Epstein files that were released by the US Justice Department last month. Mr. Clinton knew Epstein, but has denied having any knowledge he was a sex offender and says he cut off contact with him 2 decades ago. Bill Clinton will appear in Congress for a deposition on the 27th of February, and Hillary Clinton is set to appear the day before. Our Europe correspondent Jessica Parker sat down with Mrs. Clinton.
Hillary Clinton, thank you for talking to BBC News. I want to start off talking about the case of Jeffrey Epstein. You say you never met Jeffrey Epstein. Clearly, your husband did know him. The former president says he knew him before his crimes came to light. But there are also associations with Ghislaine Maxwell, including in 2013 when she was a guest at a Clinton Global Initiative event, years after allegations had emerged against her. What I want to know is, do you regret the links that there have been between Epstein, Maxwell, and the Clinton family?
Well, let me start by saying that a law was passed in Congress to require that all the files that have anything to do with them be released. And what we're seeing, I think it's fair to say, is a continuing cover-up by the Trump administration. In fact, when the Attorney General testified last week, it was quite a scene because she refused to answer questions. She diverted attention away from the matters at hand. She refused to look at the survivors. So there's something about this administration's attitude toward this, which I think really leads us to conclude they have something to hide. We don't. We have been willing to say whatever we know. We've even done it under oath, but they want us to testify, not everyone else who's mentioned many, many times, hundreds of thousands of times in these files. So we've said, fine, let us do it in public. And we will appear in public and we'll answer all your questions.
And we'll get to that in just a moment. But just to be clear, do you regret the links that there have been?
You know, we have no links. We have a very clear record that we've been willing to talk about, which my husband has said. He took some rides on the airplane for his charitable work. I don't recall ever meeting him.
Did you ever meet Ghislaine Maxwell?
I did on a few occasions, and thousands of people go to the Clinton Global Initiative. So it to me is not something that is really at the heart of what this matter is about. They are accused, and in both cases were convicted of horrific crimes against girls and women. That should be the focus. And we are more than happy to say what we know, which is very limited and totally unrelated to their behavior or their crimes. And we want to do it in public because let's make this transparent. The survivors deserve that. The public deserves that. But, you know, the Republican member of Congress who is running this hearing or this investigation is trying to protect the president. So let's get to what's really at stake here.
Just on this hearing, and obviously I'm sure Donald Trump and his administration would reject your characterization of what's going on, and he's denied
How
any
can they
wrongdoing.
reject it? They
But
can't answer questions. And the Attorney General was clearly unwilling to answer questions. She works for him. So let's be very clear here. According to what we now know, Mr. Trump, President Trump, is mentioned, some say, 1 million times in the files. People in his cabinet are mentioned. That's what it says, you know, on the internet over and over again. So let's find out what the truth is. That's why we want it to be transparent and in public.
And on that, your upcoming appearance before the Oversight Committee, where are we with that? You want to appear in public versus closed door deposition. Is it going ahead and how? What is the format going to be?
We will show up, but we think it would be better to have it in public because what we want is for everybody to get to the facts about this. We have nothing to hide. We have called for the full release of these files repeatedly. We think sunlight is the best disinfectant. Get the files out. They are slow walking it. They are redacting the names of men who are in it. They are stonewalling legitimate requests from members of Congress. That has nothing to do with us. Something is going on. They know it. I know it. If they're going to have me testify, I would prefer to do it in public because I want everybody to see it at the same time. If I have to do it behind closed doors, they're not going to like what I have to say because I have very strong opinions about what it is they're hiding and who they are protecting.
I just want to ask you, there are calls for another individual who denies wrongdoing to go before Congress on this matter. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly Prince Andrew. Do you think he should testify?
I think everybody should testify. Look,
including the former prince.
I think everybody should testify who is asked to testify. I just want it to be fair. I want everybody treated the same way. That's not true for my husband and me because other witnesses were asked to testify. They gave written statements under oath. We offered that. They want to pull us. Why did they want to pull us into this? To divert attention from President Trump. This is not complicated. This is so obvious, and they keep trying to divert. Look at this shiny object. We're going to have the Clintons, even Hillary Clinton, who never met the guy. We're going to have her there. Let's focus on what's really happening here. You have an attorney general and a Justice Department attempting to hide information that should be made public.
I just want to ask you, though, because as many people have said, being in the Epstein files does not mean that you've done anything wrong. But speaking for yourself and for your family, what was your reaction when you saw some of the material that has been released? I'm thinking, for example, of images of your husband apparently in a hot tub in a swimming pool on Epstein's plane. What was your reaction to that? And do you know the context surrounding some of those images?
Absolutely. And it wasn't a hot tub on a plane. It was one of the stops they made to look at philanthropic and charitable work that my husband has done, saving literally millions of lives around the world. It turned out that was done long before there was any public awareness and certainly any conviction of any crime by Giuffre Epstein. So it was a short period of time that was in pursuit of charitable philanthropic work. A lot of people were traveling at the same time. Many staff members, guests, other supporters of the foundation. If Bill and I had a penny for every person we've taken pictures with, we would be extremely rich today.
Let's move on to what we're seeing. You've just come from the Munich Security Conference, and a lot of people are talking about the idea of a new world order. I'm interested in your thoughts. In terms of transatlantic relations between Europe and the United States, do you think they have permanently shifted, that there is no going back to the way things were before?
Well, I think time will tell whether we are going to support the rule of law, support the strong alliances that were forged through and after World War II, create an area of peace and security in the transatlantic or not. And as I said in Munich, I think that comes down to whether or not the people in America turn out, Donald Trump and Republicans, who are more concerned about Putin than they are about democracy, and whether Europe stands against efforts to undermine the ties amongst European nations in favor of the rule of law, in favor of peace and security, and against Putin. So I'm hoping that the answers are the right answers. I'm hoping that people in Europe and people in the United States will stand up for universal values that have actually protected our peace and security now for more than 80 years.
When you look at the United States, would you still say it is a country that can be seen as the leader of the free world?
Well, it appears that Donald Trump wants to be the leader, but not necessarily of a free world. He is very enamored of Vladimir Putin, who is a dictator, brutal.
He's also criticized him at times.
Donald Trump has never criticized Putin. You can go
His
back.
handling of
No,
Ukraine.
you can go back and look, because many of us have done it, looking for one moment. You know, he said, come on, he needs to solve this. He needs to. And what do we now hear? That he and Putin want to profit off the death and misery of the Ukrainian people. So is that a leader? Well, I suppose if you count it in terms of military power. We are still the leader, but are we the leader in values? Are we the leader in bringing people together? Are we the leader in trying to create hope and opportunity? I think that's an open question.
But Donald Trump's pressure has led, for example, to Europe spending more on defense, including here in Germany, which is something Americans have wanted for a long time. So would you actually count that as a success?
Well, there was a lot of pressure on the Europeans from previous presidents, and including in Trump's first term. And I think the real credit for that goes to Vladimir Putin. I think Vladimir Putin's aggressive behavior, starting with Georgia, Crimea, and then the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, has woken up the Europeans, unlike anything anybody else could ever tell them. Obviously, Trump has, pushed that. But it's the Europeans who finally have realized that Vladimir Putin is attempting to undermine European security, and left to his own devices, I believe, along with many other security experts, will threaten the independence of the Baltic states, Poland, and elsewhere. So this is not just rhetorical push from the American president. This is the cold reality that here in the 21st century, we are dealing with a dictator who wants to dominate and control not just Ukraine, but Europe.
My final question is on artificial intelligence. You believe that this should be regulated more firmly. How can that be done when you're looking at a kind of patchwork potentially of regulation across the globe?
I think if we don't regulate it, we will wake up as we are now with social media and regret it deeply. I think social media has had a very negative effect on our children. We have evidence of that. Evidence, sadly, that comes mostly from the tech companies, because they follow very closely how to keep our kids addicted to social media. I applaud Macron in France. I applaud Sanchez in Spain, Australia, and others who have woken up to the danger social media poses. It also undermines democracy because it undermines trust, it undermines unity, it undermines common effort. And I think it will be on steroids with artificial intelligence.
How can artificial intelligence, if that's what you think should happen, how can that be done on a global scale?
Because look at
do you need like a UN type body to do that?
Well, it has to start with individual nations, as they are now with social media. But remember, the European Union is the only serious regulator of technology in the world right now.
And you disagree with some people's view that that's very onerous, the regulation that
When we first started talking about putting seatbelts into cars, because we had so many deaths from car accidents, the car makers complained, drivers complained, everybody complained. Who wants to have these straps over our body? We should be free in our cars. And the regulators said, we're going to save lives. Now, I don't think Elon Musk should determine the future of either our children or civilization. Of course, he doesn't like it. But the Digital Services Act that the European Union passed is the only comprehensive effort to try to rein it in. Now we're looking at artificial intelligence, where even some of the creators of this new phenomenon have no idea what it's going to do to us. They know it's going to cost jobs. They know that it's going to kind of mess with people's heads through delusion and hallucination and all the rest that we already see happening. But they don't know whether it's actually going to control our institutions. Can it take over our air traffic control system? Can it take over our electric grid? Can it do further damage to our democracy and our ability to really govern ourselves? We don't know the answers to that. And people who were at the birth of artificial intelligence, like Giuffre and others who were among the original creators, are all saying, wait a minute, slow down. This is not just a big technological change. This is an existential change in how human beings are going to be treated and treat each other and what's going to happen to us. So I think it's a terrible example of negligence not to try to get into it and understand it better, and require the tech companies to help us figure out what is the best way to make sure that the worst of artificial intelligence doesn't happen.
First of all, thank you very much for talking to us. We really appreciate it. appreciate it. Can I ask you about what Virginia Giuffre says happened the first time she says she was forced to have sex with Prince Andrew, which was March 2001 in London?
Yes, she describes it in the book in great detail. Ghislaine Maxwell woke her up that day saying, "Get out of bed, sleepyhead." And the whole idea was, we're going to have an amazing day. She quickly was told that she was going to meet a prince. This was a young woman who, as a tiny child, had loved the movie Cinderella. And the idea of meeting a prince was exciting to her. And so Ghislaine took her shopping, and she put on this outfit and went and met Prince Andrew. It was in Ghislaine's home, and they had flown. It was Virginia's first time in London. It was her first time abroad. Ghislaine had helped her fill out her passport application, and they went to a meal. They went to Tramp's nightclub, where they danced together, Virginia and the prince. And then when they came home on the ride home, they were not in the same car as the prince himself. He was with his security detail. And Ghislaine and Giuffre told her, "You now must do for him what you do for us." So when they got home, Ghislaine and Giuffre excused themselves and basically sent her off to sexually service Prince Andrew.
And he denies any sexual contact. He has said he has no recollection of ever meeting her. The third time she says she was forced to have sex with him involved Prince Andrew, Epstein, and 8 other young girls.
Yes, the 8 other young girls, she was told, were supplied. This was on the island, the private island that Giuffre owned. It was called Little St. James. Giuffre called it Little St. Jeff's. And the young girls did not speak English other than Virginia. And Virginia was told that they had been procured by Jean-Luc Brunel, who was a modeling agent in Paris, who was a close associate of Epstein. And he had flown these young women in. There was some joking about how these are the easiest females to deal with, the ones who can't speak English. And yes, Virginia was a part of that orgy.
According to the book, Epstein had become fascinated by sadomasochism, and this was to cause great physical pain to Virginia Giuffre, wasn't it?
Yes, it was horrible. She was basically hogtied. She was made to crawl across the floor, etc. And again, you know, I think what this book does is it catalogs some of those most painful and awful experiences that she had, but it also attempts to show Virginia as a woman in full. You know, she had some very, very terrible abusive experiences in her young life. And then she escaped and she became a mom. And then once she had her 3rd child, a daughter, she realized, I'm now the mother of a female child. I'm realizing I'm sending her out into the world where she could experience anything like I had. And so I need to do something. And at that point, she decides, I'm going to come forward publicly and try to hold my abusers to account. You know, this isn't just about Prince Andrew. There's more than a dozen, if not dozens, of men out there who Virginia knew Epstein and Maxwell together had trafficked Virginia to.
Yeah.
So it's not just about Prince Andrew.
Absolutely. And there is one, I mean, all the accounts are distressing, but there is one particularly distressing testimony where she says a former minister, she describes him as a former minister, she says raped her on Epstein's island and choked her till she lost consciousness. Why hasn't Virginia Giuffre named all of these men in the book that she accuses of abusing her?
Well, she's pretty clear about this in the last section of the book. You know, any person who has been abused, forced to have sex against their will with someone they don't want to have sex with, makes this choice. They have to weigh, you know, the cost of coming forward, which I can delineate, but any normal person can figure out. The cost of your privacy, the cost of your safety if the person is dangerous, the time and anguish you have to spend and endure when you have to relate again and again in depositions what happens. You have to relive the moment. She's weighing that against what her core goal was, which is to make the world a better place and to hold these people to account and to, in some ways, comment by doing that on the fact that it's not right that people who have money and power get to mistreat people who don't. That's not okay. In the case of the former minister she mentioned, she was afraid of him. She was afraid he would hurt her or kill her. There were other men who had threatened her in more genteel ways, basically saying, take our names out of your mouth, or we will keep you in court for the rest of your days.
And it's important to let our audience know that you know the names of these people because you did the fact-checking, as you were explaining earlier. Donald Trump is mentioned in this book, and Virginia Giuffre is complimentary about him.
Yes, well, you know, she'd met him at Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago is the spa and hotel and club that he owns in Florida, and Virginia was working there as a towel girl making $9 an hour in the spa when Ghislaine Maxwell strolled in and procured her, sort of deceived her into coming to Jeffrey Epstein's house. And so we can talk about that if you want to, but she had met Trump and he was kind to her in those early days when she was 15 and 16, I believe. She may have met him even when she was younger because her father worked there. And then right before we closed the book in October, I was in Australia with her, and the presidential election was about to happen, and he was running yet again for president. And he had campaigned on the plank, in part, that he was going to release the Epstein files.
How could the information, the names in the files, help survivors of Epstein and Maxwell?
Well, for one thing, it could stop putting the impetus on the survivors, on Virginia's book, on me, to name the names. Why should the survivors who have bravely come forward and named the names to law enforcement have to keep on pushing it? Law enforcement should take over.
On Friday, Prince Andrew was forced to announce he was voluntarily giving up his Duke of York title and some other titles. He still retains them officially. He just won't be using them. What do you think of that?
I can speak for Virginia. I know that she would view it as a victory, that he was forced, by whatever means, to voluntarily give them up. For many, maybe particularly in the United States, but maybe even in the UK, it's a symbolic gesture, but it's an important one. It's made history, modern history, in terms of the royal era. I mean, I've never heard of such a thing happening. And it also just a step in the right direction. You know, Virginia wanted all the men who she'd been trafficked to against her will to be held to account. And this is just one of the men, but he is being forced to, even though he continues to deny it, his life is being eroded because of his past behavior, as it should be. You know, the other thing about Prince Andrew that always kind of lingers in my mind is that there was a period where he indicated that he was willing to help investigators in the United States as they tried to do their due diligence. But he was never available for some reason to do that. He said he would, but he never did. And that's something he could still do. He could say, as he has repeatedly, I still deny that I was involved. Even though I settled with her when she sued me, I still deny that I did anything wrong. However, I was in these houses, and I was on that island, and I was on the jet, and I saw things, and I know how much these women have suffered, and I would like to share what I saw. Remember, these jets, they weren't just private. They had been remodeled in order to afford many bedrooms. They were designed as flying trafficking agents. They were there to use girls in. And Prince Andrew was on at least one of those jets that I know of, if not more. He saw things, and he could come forward about those things.
And he should do that now, do you believe?
Well, he has to take sort of the measure of his own moral compass. He said in his settlement with Virginia that he now acknowledges the pain that these women and young girls had suffered. If you really acknowledge that, if you really feel it, do something about it.
And he not only acknowledged it, he also pledged in that statement when he settled with Virginia Giuffre that he would support the fight against the evil of sex trafficking and he would support victims.
Exactly. Have you seen anything he's done that has done that? I haven't.
The book details the sexual abuse Virginia says Ghislaine Maxwell subjected her and others to. And some think that Maxwell's role was only about procuring girls for Epstein and his friends.
It has mystified me, even after she's been convicted of hurting girls and women, that somehow the narrative has shifted, that she was like some sort of receptionist who just kept track of who was going to come in when and service Jeffrey Epstein. That is completely and patently false.
And so any suggestion, and there are suggestions of this, that she should be pardoned? What do you make of that?
Well, she should absolutely not be pardoned. It's patently ridiculous. This is a person who is convicted, first of all, in a court of law. This is a woman who used to park herself outside of private schools in New York City to try to intercept young girls coming out of high school. So she was a master procurer.
Virginia Giuffre took her own life earlier this year. She wanted this book to be published. How do you reflect, Amy, on the fact that she is not here now?
So I'm sad, and I'm honored to be able to speak at least a little bit in her behalf, to stand up for her. She deserved that. You know, she did that. She wrote this book for all of us. She wrote this book to try to help other people, to make the world a better place. And she deserves all credit for whatever role she played in forcing Prince Andrew to relinquish a few more of his titles. But she deserves all credit, even more than that, for being brave enough to stand up, to say, this isn't right. She was a galvanizer. She was a hero. And there's too much carping out there still about how, well, I don't know, maybe she shouldn't be believed, or, well, if it was all so hard for these girls, why didn't they just leave? And the answer to that last question is, when you grow up in a world where what you've learned from your own personal experience is that grown men rape young children and they get away with it, you don't necessarily think when you walk out the door of Epstein's mansion in Manhattan and flee that it's going to be any better out there. For Virginia, it had not been.
Amy Wallace, thank you very much for talking to Newsnight this evening. We really, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Of course, of course.
Let's bring you some breaking news that has come to us in the last minute or so from Buckingham Palace. His Majesty the King has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles and honours of Prince Andrew. This statement coming into us in the last 10 or so seconds from Buckingham Palace.
Hang on, you guys. He was in the files as well. He was. Hang on, you guys. I want to show you one more thing. Nothing Obama. Obama was in the files. I'm gonna make that up. I feel like she's being threatened behind the scenes. Oh, my dog is tripping. Hold on. Give me a second, you guys. I'll find my. Stop it. Stop. Hang on. But he was in the files. Can you guys still hear me? Hold on. Let's see how fast I can find this for you. My dog is scared of the rain. Let me see if I can find this. Oh no. Let's see. Here it is. All right.
To bring on a professional coroner to discuss, is this even possible? Can the alleged bodies be found and properly examined? Welcome to Sidebar. Presented by Law and Crime, I'm Jesse Weber.
Wait, yes.
Jeffrey Epstein has been called a lot of things, and he has been accused of a lot of things. But killer? Being responsible for the cover-up of violent deaths? That would be a new one. But I gotta say, what are we supposed to make of these new allegations coming out of the Epstein files? Because as you may know, we've been covering as best as we can the existing files that were released from the Department of Justice. And something came out that we got to talk about. Buried in the millions and millions of pages, there is an email that has now stood out for a very dark reason. There is an email from November 2019. It's directed to an Edward Aragon. According to KOB4, he's a local radio host. The other names are redacted in this email, but this is what it says. Quote, Edward, this is sensitive, so it'll be the first and last email depending on your discretion. You can choose to take it or trash it, but this comes from a person that has been there and seen it all as a former staff at the Zoro. The material below was taken from Jeffrey Epstein's home as my insurance in case of future litigation against Epstein. Sorry, no questions. What is damning about Jeffrey Epstein is yet to be written. Did you know somewhere in the hills outside the Zoro, 2 foreign girls were buried on orders of Jeffrey and Madam G? Both died by strangulation during rough fetish sex. And there even appear to be links to purported sex videos, including one that says sex video with minor. And then it goes on to say, please arrange for 1 Bitcoin BTC by 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today, Thursday, 11/22/19, to the BTC wallet address. That's redacted. The USB will be sent anonymously to your attention by overnight courier upon receipt of the funds. You have my assurance this is exclusive, never shared before, no attorneys, no samples, no questions, please confirm ASAP. So Zoro, by the way, is referring to Zoro Ranch. It's about 30 miles south of Santa Fe, New Mexico. We've talked about this Epstein property before. We had found evidence that upon Epstein's death, he wanted this property, along with all of his major properties, to go to Corinna Shuliak, his purported secret girlfriend. This is in trust documents and will documents. Now, Epstein, based on the reporting here, apparently purchased the 7,500-acre property from former New Mexico Governor Bruce King in 1993. And there were several civil lawsuits that accused Epstein of sexually assaulting girls at this property. It was dubbed the Playboy Ranch, where Epstein, in fact, is accused of sexually abusing a 16-year-old girl as early as 1996. And for example, you have this unsealed 2016 court deposition where the Epstein accuser, renowned Epstein accuser, Virginia Giuffre, testified that Ghislaine Maxwell ordered her to give the late former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson a massage at the ranch. Now, this radio host, Aragon, said that he got this message anonymously. He sent the email to the FBI, which is why, by the way, it was in the Epstein files to begin with, why it was released from the DOJ. And he indicated that he didn't pay this person, which when you think about one Bitcoin back in the day was reportedly worth about $8,000 at the time. And he indicated that while he spoke to an FBI agent, he never heard anything more from it, didn't know the status of the investigation. Now, let me be clear about something, okay? We couldn't find more corroborating evidence to support this claim that, there are dead bodies somewhere in the area of this ranch or on the ranch. We don't know if these allegations are true. But if they are true, when would this have happened? We don't know that either. But apparently, I will tell you, this ranch, this claim, is being taken seriously. And in a little bit, I'm going to be bringing on a professional coroner to determine what can we expect here? What potential evidence could be left behind? How can you even find a body? What will be left to actually examine? How much can we tell here? But the reason that we're even bringing a coroner on and talking about this is because this claim is getting serious attention. You have New Mexico's Land Commissioner, Stephanie Garcia Richard, who sent a letter to the New Mexico Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney's Office requesting a full investigation. According to KOB4, Epstein had apparently leased land around this ranch from the state land office, did it through a company called Cypress Inc., but Garcia Richard ended that lease in light of what happened with Epstein. And in a further escalation, the Chief Deputy Attorney General, James Grayson, said the Department of Justice is taking these allegations seriously, only has so much information right now to go forward with because they're working to try to get the original documents to try to verify these accusations. Grayson saying, quote, "As we understand it, the allegations appear to be unsubstantiated and stem from an anonymous individual referencing events that purportedly occurred more than 6 years ago. We will work to obtain the original unredacted emails and any underlying files, as access to complete and authentic materials is critical to our assessment and planning. These circumstances raise significant concerns regarding the reliability, authenticity, and credibility of the claims. Notwithstanding those concerns, we are prepared to review and assess any verifiable information should it be provided through appropriate and lawful means." Stephanie Garcia Richard saying, quote, "It is our responsibility to manage this land, and if it was being used for nefarious purposes, if it was being used for criminal purposes, we need to know." All right, before we move on, I got to give a quick shout out to our partner, CyberGhost VPN. Look, have you ever hesitated to connect to public Wi-Fi, like in a restaurant, airport, work, school, because you're afraid someone might steal your information? It's totally reasonable. The truth is, eyes are watching you every time you go online, but that's why we got CyberGhost VPN. You can select one of their hundreds of locations before you browse, and they will encrypt everything through their secure servers. This way, no one can track your online activity. It works on up to 7 devices at once, so you can share with meaningful participation in the ongoing fact-finding mission. I'm going to talk about the Truth Commission in a minute. Now, back to Garcia Richard. She said in an interview, while the state land office sent hundreds of pages of Zoro Ranch leasing records to the New Mexico Attorney General in 2019, Garcia Richard said, "I have a lot of frustration that we are now 7 years beyond the initial cancellation of the leases. And to my knowledge, not one member of law enforcement has investigated the ranch or state land." And in her letter to the DOJ, she added, "We are fully committed to assisting with an investigation in any way possible, including providing access to state lands adjacent to the former Zoro Ranch." So assuming, these bodies are really buried, where exactly are they buried? You even had U.S. Representative Melanie Stansbury, who issued a video recorded statement.
I spent a fair amount of my time this morning looking at the files on Zoro Ranch. There's some dark stuff there. And I think it's really important that our colleagues, State House Representatives Mariana Anaya and Andrea Romero, are conducting this Truth Commission because the FBI never did a full forensic investigation of the ranch property. And it's clear that crimes were committed there. And people knew about it. There were victims who went to the FBI, who went to law enforcement, and those crimes were never followed up on, and the ranch was sold from the estate before a full investigation could be done. So there's a lot of unanswered questions about Zoro Ranch in New Mexico, what went down there, why it was not fully investigated, why people were not held accountable. And frankly, as a New Mexican, to anyone who was hurt there, my heart goes out to you.
Guess what happened yesterday? New Mexico lawmakers on Monday, they passed legislation to launch a full-scale investigation here. You have a committee of both Republicans and Democrats who are going to have subpoena power. They're going to try to get testimony from survivors of the alleged abuse that happened at this ranch and local residents to testify, all at the state capitol. So the person who maybe sent that 2019 email, will they come forward? I don't know. But according to Reuters, this probe is going to cost about $2.5 million, reportedly funded through a settlement between the AG's office and financial services companies for failing to address the alleged abuses at this property. And the idea is here, they want to transform the law. They want to amend the law that may have allowed Giuffre Epstein to allegedly operate the way he's accused of operating at this property. And the preliminary findings are due in July. There's a full final report that's going to be due by year's end. And you have to wonder, is it going to include allegations about dead bodies? Representative Andrea Romero, she said that they're going to use subpoenas and public records and testimonies, quote, to put the whole story together. And in a statement following the vote to launch all this, Romero said that, quote, New Mexicans deserve to know the truth about what went on at the Zoro Ranch and who knew about it. We have heard years of allegations and rumors about Epstein's activities in New Mexico, but unfortunately, federal investigators have failed to put together an official record. With this Truth Commission, we can finally fill in the gaps by investigating the failures that led to the horrific allegations of abuse and crime at Zoro Ranch, so we can learn from them and prevent such atrocities from taking place in our state going forward. This is a complication, maybe a complication, got to mention it. So while the 1,200 acres that were previously leased by Epstein's company is still public and unleased, this is according to Garcia Richard, guess who owns the actual ranch today? The family of Texas businessman and politician Donald Huffines. It was bought in 2023 by an LLC. This LLC was apparently created just 1 month before. And Huffines is actually running for statewide comptroller's office. And according to the New Mexican, the Zoro Ranch was renamed the San Rafael Ranch, located at San Rafael Road. By the way, what was the purchase price? Reportedly, it was listed in 2021 for over $27 million, but the sales price may have dropped to $18 million. We don't know what it was actually bought for. Although I will tell you, there's a side note. The LLC made the argument, given the ties to Epstein, along with a lower sales price, that's why it was actually valued at only $13.4 million in 2023 for tax purposes. Interesting side note. By the way, public business filings apparently indicated that at one point, Huffines' son, Colin, was the manager of the LLC. Then you had Alan Blakemore, a spokesperson for the family, who released the statement saying, 4 years after Mr. Epstein's death, the Huffines family purchased property in New Mexico listed at public auction, whose proceeds benefited his victims. Prior to the auction listing, they had never visited the property. Now, I will tell you this. The Huffines family did indicate that they would fully cooperate with this New Mexico investigation if authorities wanted to search the property. That's big. And it is being reported that the feds haven't even searched this ranch as of December 2019. So one of the things that's come out is you had the former AG, Hector Balderas, wrote a letter to then U.S. Attorney John Anderson in October of 2019 about a joint investigation. Quote, my office has been actively investigating and assisting other state and federal agencies with their investigations related to criminality perpetrated in New Mexico by Giuffre Epstein. And Balderas wrote and requested that the United States Attorney's Office, quote, explore initiating the process to seize Epstein's New Mexico land holdings. But now all these years later, it's coming up again. And by the way, Zoro Ranch, it came up quite a bit in the Epstein files. Several photographs released in the Epstein files show women or girls, their faces apparently redacted at Zoro Ranch. I'll give you an example. In the files, there's a 2015 itinerary, or that's what it appears to be, presumably for Epstein, and it says Saturday, August 1st, 2015, Zoro. Sunday, August 2nd, 2015, Zoro, San Francisco. Reminder, late into the island today, 11:18 a.m., depart Zoro, 12:18 p.m., arrives San Jose. There's a lot of correspondence regarding the ranch, too, in the Epstein files. In fact, it appears the ranch is mentioned over 4,000 times. A lot of the correspondence between 2012 and 2018, you have the ranch as the sender or receiver in emails. There's even an email signature that says Zoro Management LLC. So with all that in mind, what would it take for there to be an excavation of potential bodies on this property? And if bodies are found, what would it show? That's what I want to talk about. Okay, so I want to bring on Richland County Coroner, Dr. Nada Rutherford. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's good to see you. Okay, this is a big allegation. We don't know if this is true. Obviously, we're talking about the fact that now an investigation is being launched into this property. You know, it's about sexual abuse allegations, but who knows what else they might be able to find during the course of this if they have residents and you know, survivors speak out about what they saw. What would it take for authorities to actually go around the property and try to excavate to find bodies? Let's start right there.
First of all, you have New Mexico. The terrain there is going to be extremely difficult. It's dry, it's rugged terrain, it's rough. So any excavation that's going to happen, they're going to need to have some idea about where this could possibly take place on this property, unless they're going to dig up the entire property, which is not very prudent of them. So they would need some sort of ground penetrating devices that could help to look and see if there's some sort of grave there, if they put this person in a box, if they buried them with something special that's not supposed to be in the ground naturally. So they're going to need a lot of technology first before they just go digging around this property.
And it's a big property. It's a big property. And this allegation is not even clear about when these people were allegedly buried there, which makes me wonder, even if you were digging, what could you potentially find? What would be left over?
You're going to have skeletal remains at this point. These allegations purport that this happened so long ago. And so not only did they say that these are possibly minors, so you have smaller bodies that are potentially buried. You have scavengers that are in this area, again, animals that are indigenous to this area that are... Again, it is very hard to dig a grave unless you have special equipment. So, and especially on that type of terrain. So did they have special equipment? We know that, supposedly these people have a lot of money, they have a lot of resources. So if they tapped into those resources, they could have done this properly. But again, that's why the technology piece of this is going to be so important, to be able to see where they could have possibly buried someone. And then the amount of time that has passed, it's going to be grown over. You're not going to be able to see, freshly disturbed ground as you would for someone who has maybe been recently buried. And so again, this is going to take a long time. And those excavation efforts are probably just going to reveal skeletal remains, which then you're going to have to extract DNA from possibly the femur bones. And then who are these supposed minors that were there? Do their families know that they're missing? Where were they trafficked from? So not only are you trying to pinpoint country of origin, possibly, since they said that these minors were possibly from foreign countries, now you're going to have to try to track down family utilizing DNA. Skeletal remains, again, you look at the femur bone, you're trying to gather the DNA from there, but what else could you do? Dental records and things, but you must know the identity of the person in order to be able to do that.
Can you elaborate on that? So even if they find remains, you're saying it could be very, very difficult to establish A, identity, but B, cause and manner of death?
Absolutely. Unless they did something that affected the skeleton of the person, soft tissue injuries are not going to be readily apparent in someone who has been buried, especially if they've been buried for a really long time. That soft tissue eventually becomes desiccated and goes away. It goes back to the earth. And so you're not going to see much. So unless they were blunt force trauma, stabbed, shot, something like that, you may not see those things. You could see broken bones potentially, but again, how well preserved is the skeleton? And that's going to be very important. How quickly were these persons supposedly buried? Again, lots of allegations, lots of speculation, but if you are searching for bones, then you're going to need technology to look over all of that terrain.
So in other words, if we take these allegations as true that you had these girls die as a result of strangulation, it may be very difficult to actually see that.
Yes, it will. And again, how well was the body preserved before burial? Meaning the hyoid bone, which is located here in the neck, it's a protected bone, but usually that's what we see broken in someone who has died from strangulation. And so you'll see that piece again of the hyoid bone broken off, but you also see soft tissue injury. So if the body is not well preserved, then you're not going to see those things. And again, after all this time, all of that soft tissue is going to be gone. So in a regular autopsy where we suspect strangulation, you're going to see petechial hemorrhaging. You're going to see bleeding within the strap muscles of the neck. You're going to see that damage that happens from someone being strangled. But in skeletons, you don't see those things, again, unless there is severe blunt force injury to that area. And again, small, tiny bones. You have insects and things that are going to feed on the body when it's buried. And so again, you may lose a lot of that evidence.
A couple of questions about that. And I apologize if you're repeating yourself. I just want to clarify. Is there any way to determine the age, whether it's from, an anthropologist coming in or looking at the, like you said, maybe dental records, if it's possible, or the bones? Is there any way to determine age?
Yes, absolutely. And this is where a forensic anthropologist is going to be really important. We have two that work in our office, PhDs, who teach me so much on a daily basis about just how they make these determinations. So femur length is going to be important. They're going to measure those bones. They're going to make sure that any part of that skeletal remain that they find, that they try to put that body together as anatomically correct as possible. And then they'll start getting their information from there. So again, the measurements of those bones, not only just the femur length, but also head circumference and those different things, basing those anthropology measurements, those are going to be very important in terms of assessing them and comparing them to what someone's age could be for the measurements that they find. So again, I always refer to forensic anthropologists on that, and they're going to need quite a few if they do get to a point where they're going to do excavation, because you don't want to lose any evidence. You can't just dig it up. It has to be done very carefully, methodically, and it's a very time-intensive process.
And can you just elaborate a little bit more on the dental records, what may or may not be available there?
So whenever we look at dental records, we look at the shape of the jaw. We look for any fillings, any cavities, any bridge work, anything that may be present, braces. For example, they come from someplace. So again, they're useless if we don't know a potential identity of the person, because we would have to be able to go to that dental office and subpoena those records and say, hey, could you please give us the dental records for this person so that we can compare what we have found with these skeletal remains. Again, I think TV sometimes tricks us into thinking that we can just use dental records and all of a sudden we can find out everything we need to know about a person. But you have to have a possible identity for someone before you just go digging through dental records.
Well, let's say there's a crown or a filling or braces. There's no way to extract DNA from that?
Sometimes there is, but you have the femur bone, which is going to give you a lot more information. So any of the bones, you can get DNA from them, but that femur bone is going to have the best, and that's usually what we utilize. They cut a little window into the bone, and that's usually what's utilized for DNA and those purposes. So again, that larger bone is going to have more information.
What happens, again, we're speculating here, but assuming there are bodies here for a moment, if they're buried with items, I'm not saying that there would be ID, but if they're buried wearing clothing, would any of the clothing or materials that were buried with them, would that remain at that point? What have you seen in your experience? I'm not, because obviously if you're dealing with somebody who's nude, right, that's kind of what we're talking about. But if they were buried with articles of clothing or items, talk to me about the ability of that to be preserved and the ability to extract DNA or other forensic material from it.
No, there's definitely the possibility of extracting DNA and other items. You have to think hairs. People often don't think about your hair sheds. Other fibers get transferred during burial process. Most people are not experienced criminals. And that's what people fail to realize. Most people have not committed these types of crimes before. And so they make a lot of mistakes in the process. Again, what kind of resources they had access to, I don't know. And again, I don't know anything about this case. I'm simply commenting on the possibility that bodies are on this land. And so for me, for my office, when we've had skeletal remains partially buried or buried for a long time, and we've done the ground penetrating radar and found what we needed to find, we remove those skeletal remains very carefully. So even the area, the dirt around the body, we're going to preserve a lot of that as well and take samples from it because it can sometimes give you great information. So there is the possibility that very valuable information can be obtained from what was buried with that person. And usually what we see in our line of work is when people bury someone, they bury their stuff with them. So the DNA from their things, if they put something in someone's mouth, it could possibly have saliva on it, which again has DNA. Hair, just because the skeletal remains are there, it doesn't mean that the hair goes away. Sometimes we find skeletons that still have hair attached. So again, these are things that could be very helpful in determining the identity of this person, but it could also give us pertinent information about who may have buried this person.
Like you said, like hair of someone else. So just to be clear, hair can stay for quite some time, even if buried underground?
Yes, it can. I mean, we've seen this with excavations from around the world and looking at people from the supposed Neanderthal, era. They have found hair. And so again, that gives you a lot of information. And hair retains things. It retains things like drugs. It retains nutritional information sometimes. So again, anything that's with that body, they're going to want to excavate this in the most careful way possible. I cannot stress this enough that they cannot just go in there just digging and doing it very roughly. It needs to be layer by layer by layer. And it is a very time intensive process. Shout out to all of the forensic anthropologists out there because their work, especially on a case like this, is going to be so vital.
What would it take for an excavation to be ordered in something like this? In your experience, when you've seen cases, I mean, there's one thing to have this right now uncorroborated account, but obviously they're taking it seriously. They're trying to look into it and see what they can find. In your experience, what would it take for them to go around the property, to excavate, to use ground penetrating devices to try to find a body? What would it take?
Well, usually it takes that someone is missing and they have a possible location for this missing person. I know here in Richland County, we receive calls all the time. Hey, we need help. We have a tip that this missing person may be in this well, or they may be in this part of this 40-acre piece of land. And we will work with other agencies to utilize their technology to see if this is a possibility that someone is there. And then we have cases like the case of Adriana Laster, who they were just digging in the landfill and bones were found. So again, were bones found? Is there some sort of suspicion that there are missing persons on this property? So usually it just takes someone leaving a tip or giving information that could be related to a missing person for them to go and start digging. But again, they are going to need technology to even begin looking through all of this land because there's just so much of it. How do you find which section? Are they going to go section by section and do a grid kind of dig? I don't know, but it's going to take a lot of logistics.
And how long would that take if they went section by section using ground penetrating devices? I mean, how quickly can you get a hit?
Weeks, months. For an area that is known to possibly have a buried person, that can take a couple of hours. But for the amount of land that these researchers and that these investigators are looking at, this could take weeks in order to pinpoint an area. So they may have to have multiple devices out there trying to find what is possibly a grave.
Dr. Nada Rutherford, this is a fascinating discussion. We are obviously in the early preliminary stages of this, but I wanted to have you on just to give us something to think about as we're trying to understand this allegation. And now that there's an investigation into this property, how can I not talk about it? But again, really interesting things to think about. So we'll see what happens. But doctor, thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And that's all we
Hey, beautiful people. We covered a lot. Can y'all hear me okay? Can you guys hear me? Take off my Bluetooth. Let me get to some of y'all comments before I lay it down. So we covered Nancy Guthrie. There hasn't been any significant updates in that case, just another ransom note that we don't even know if it's real or not. So some people say, why cover Nancy Guthrie? Why not? This is an 84-year-old grandmother the Today Show, Savannah, and we don't see that happening. Like, we just don't see it. So I'm going to be praying for that family. I'm not going to lie, it looks bleak. I ran 2 dark stories tonight. We did Nancy Guthrie, and then I had to touch on the Epstein case because of all the new developments. It's so layered. It's so layered to get through these Epstein files, these emails, the flight logs, and everything else. So many names are in these files. But just because, can y'all hear me? Just because the names are in the files, it doesn't mean they did anything wrong. It doesn't mean that they did anything wrong, but the emails are dark and it's disturbing. And I just say, if you read them, proceed with caution. Proceed with caution. Chicken water out of my giant mug. I bought for myself this. Yeah, Sebastian. So it's a lot. It's a lot. So you kidnap my mom and you return her before day's over. She's, I don't know, you guys. So I'll be praying. And for the victims of the Epstein, of Epstein, you guys, are we really going to get the answers that we want? No. No. I think it's going to be up to the victims to name the people. Why are they holding on to that? Name them. And, hopefully I pray for justice. I pray for justice. Okay, you guys. So hopefully tomorrow, you guys, let's see what's going on with Donald Trump, the president, the president, and any new updates right now. There's just a lot of things that's going on. Okay. So John, none of the stuff is looking good. It's all dark, but the Epstein, this thing with Epstein is going to go on for a long time. There's just so many emails. I mean, dang, there's millions of things to go over, and it's just going to be a lot. And for me, the best way to dissect it for you guys is to find clips that wraps it all up. So that way you don't have to go through all that stuff, and I'll just break it down for you little by little. And with Nancy, I'll just give you updates. But I will keep you up to date what's going on with Donald Trump and some of the latest things that's happening there, but we'll do it tomorrow. Guilt by association. Kiki, I don't know if I agree with that, because then you'd have to say Obama. We see what's happening with Clinton. But I can't say that everybody that's listed in those files are guilty. I can't. I read through a lot of it, and I just can't say that. I was halfway thinking that MU was gonna, bro, you ain't. So I don't know. Trump was named, but stay strong, pick me girls. Hold on, let me look at that comment again. Trump was named. I keep hearing about Donald Trump, and I'm going to say this. I say it every stream almost. And I hear what you're saying. He was named by pick me girls. But if Donald Trump did anything wrong, we would have known a long time ago before the election. We would have known, because they would have used that to stop him from winning the election. Okay? The Democrats, Biden had the Democrats in control of Congress. They would have put out those files. They would have put it out before Donald Trump was elected, and he would not have been president today. Okay? So I don't believe that Donald Trump did. I'm not saying that he wasn't mentioned more times than I would like in those Epstein files, but I am going to say that saying that he did anything wrong with young girls, that's a far stretch. That would have already been out there. No, wrong. He's guilty. Alan, you got proof of that? Whoopi Goldberg was explaining why she's in a foul. Dr. Manhattan, I wish I could have gotten to that tonight. Whoopi Goldberg. Let me see if I can find a short clip on that. She was explaining it. It was quite funny, actually. Let me see if I can find a short clip of Whoopi. Whoopi Goldberg sounded ridiculous. I don't know if I'll be able to find a clip that I could play of Whoopi Goldberg, but she did try to explain that away, and I was like, Whoopi, just stop. Just stop. Yeah. Let me see. The View was pedaling back. The View was pedaling back. Well, maybe I'll show that to you guys tomorrow, because I can't find a clip that I can use that won't get a copyright. So we'll just leave that alone. But just know that Whoopi tried to explain it, and she just sounded crazy. Yeah, let me try this one. Yeah, I'm going to leave that alone. And I got some more fresh and fit videos. Okay, Melissa. Whoopi is a clean guy. Nobody wants to be associated with Epi files. That's right, Kiki. Nobody wants to be associated, but it's all coming out now. I've seen proof from a witness statement. Okay, but I need some actual proof though. If Donald Trump would have been in those files, then you would have the flight log to go along with the testimony, because Epstein recorded everything. He had videos all throughout the house, and that would not have been hidden. That's all I'm saying. It's on YouTube. The problem is finding a clip that's not, that I can play, that's not gonna get me a copyright. Let me see. Let me get off camera real fast and see if I can find that for you. I don't know if you guys can still hear me as I look real fast. Let me see how fast I can pull it up. So let's see. I'll try to find it real quick. I did see her response, and I just was like, Whoopi, stick with the view. Okay. Let me see if I can find it on one of my favorite. No, it's on E. Yeah, I don't think I can play that. Oh, wait. They covered it on entertainment. Hang on, I think I found one that I could share with you. Yeah, I will let that rest. I'll let it rest. Anyhow, you guys, that's the problem, is finding Whoopi just trying to stay relevant. I don't know what the hell Whoopi's problem. I'm gonna just share this one with you guys, okay? Oh wait, I gotta turn off my Bluetooth so you can hear it. Hold on. I'll share this with you. I work so hard to bring you guys to news. That was funny. Whoopi bugs me with her views. She bugs me. She says some of the most outrageous things.
And I'm like, I don't go anywhere. There was a fake list. Yeah. And I'm on it. So you were on the island? I was apparently, I don't know. They said I was on the island. They said I'm like, I don't go anywhere. If the story was about a bus, maybe, but it's like, so I'm just gonna say, and there's been a lot of stuff recently. I don't know what I've done to anybody, but apparently there are a lot of these kind of sites that are, what do you call them? They're parody, or they're satire sites.
No, Whoopi, no.
But people don't realize that they can be harmful.
No, I don't buy it. She's not, she goes on to give a longer explanation, and it sounded absolutely ridiculous. It just did, okay? Yeah, I'm not buying it from her. But people give Whoopi these passes, and I guess because she's a woke liberal, I guess. MAGA men hate educated, strong, outspoken women. That's not true, because I'm a strong, outspoken woman. Dr. Manhattan said, you guys haven't seen anything incriminating on Trump, and if you did, why aren't you calling the FBI and reporting what you saw? Millions of files, and they haven't seen them all. Doc, that's what I'm saying. But you notice that they focus on Donald Trump. They don't want to talk about any other person in those files. Right now, you got Clinton and Hillary responding to their involvement with Epstein, but all people can focus on is Donald Trump, trying to imply that something's in there that's not. And I find it absolutely ridiculous. That's why I know that people aren't really upset about the things that they say that they're upset with. They just want to hate Donald Trump they want to use anything, but everybody else gets a pass. And I find it hard to take it seriously. My Ralph was outspoken and white. John. Trump's still innocent. Trump is. All right, you guys. You guys have any found 77 million voted for Trump. Donald Trump won the popular vote, and he won the electoral vote because America wanted change. He wanted change. And Donald Trump is doing exactly what he was put in office to do. I'm not here to push Donald Trump on you guys, but I am saying that Donald Trump is doing what he needs to do for our country. Good night, Jerome. Good night. Thank you for hanging out with me, you guys. So feel free to leave me comments under my community wall, what you guys want me to talk about, what you guys want me to cover. I'm going to continue to bring you non-biased, non-partisan news and just talk to you about what's going on in this world. We still got the Reiner trial. We have what's going on with the Venezuelan president Maduro. Donald Trump went and snatched him up from Venezuela. Now he's facing trial for crimes against the United States. We have that going on. We have Luis Mangione, the guy that unalived the healthcare worker, the CEO. So, and they're calling him a hero. That's how dark this country has gotten. People get assassinated for their beliefs, for whatever reason, in broad daylight, and they're calling these people heroes. They're not heroes. They're criminals. We have Tyler Robinson. Of course, they're alleged. Right now it's alleged. Thank you so much for the super sticker. Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Well, of course, I'm conservative, but that does not mean I don't allow you guys to speak your mind. There we go. Thank you, Lahana. Thank you so much. So Tyler Robinson, I was looking at something, maybe I'll share it with you guys, with Erica Kirk speaking on this, as Erica Kirk has really been in the news since her husband's death, his untimely passing, rest in peace. So you have all these things going on. Tyler Robinson, they call him a hero. Why? Because Charlie Kirk was a conservative, and he spoke about traditional values, and so he lost his life. We know that. So there's a lot of things that's going on, you guys, and just stay prayed up. I'm praying for our country, and I'm praying for you guys. No, that shot with Donald Trump wasn't staged. That's ridiculous, but people say whatever. They say whatever. A year later, Charlie, that's right, Dr. Manhattan. You don't think who's gone? John Smith. Elizabeth, it wasn't staged. It wasn't staged. It was real. There was nothing staged about it, but I'm not here to argue you guys' belief. We know that it wasn't staged. Okay? Nobody's gonna, that man almost lost his life. It's called letting the devil control the nation. The government unalived Charlie getting too much attention. The government's not on trial. I have slight differences with Jesse Jackson, but if the president gave him a good word, I can forgive Jesse. Nothing was staged. We know that it wasn't staged. And a very small few are saying that. There's not really anyone that's, I don't want to insult you guys, but we know that wasn't staged. It wasn't staged. That man almost lost his life in front of the world. And that just makes America, that's not a good look, you guys. Our country can't be divided like that. Attacking the president, why? Because of a few hurt feelings from the left? No offense. That wasn't staged. Nobody's gonna lose their ear, part of it. Thank you, Elizabeth. God bless you too. So I'm not going to entertain that. You guys are going to say whatever you want to say. And I can't argue with that kind of ignorance. How you doing, Chris? So how are they going to be on trial? What you talking about, Swiss Army Chevron? Whenever they can say that stage, they know they got caught trying to assassinate them. And they tried to assassinate him. I went to the rally in Coachella because I'm in Coachella. And there was another attempt on his life that nobody likes to talk about. The guy wasn't even charged. He had all types of ammunition lying in wait for the president. It was, the rally was great, but that was definitely a scary moment, right? Not to mention we got stuck there because of the buses, but that's another story for another day. I'm fine, Chris. Upper ear hears with the heels. That's right, Doc. You tell him. There was nothing staged about that. That was actually very scary. Very scary. Thanks for your efforts trying to help get information out there. John Smith, thank you. And I do appreciate people that support my stream and that Dr. Manhattan, who's a Black woman. I do appreciate you guys. And you know what? Conservatives, get out there and vote because midterm elections are coming. It's important. Things don't look good because of what happened with Minnesota, the paid agitators and the protesters and all those other things. I'm not going to talk about all that tonight, but the country's at an unrest and it feels divided. But I do feel that people fight against change, but the change is to make this country stronger. And we do live in the greatest nation. We live in an amazing country. You can overcome any obstacle as long as you do the work. And so with that said, America first, time to get our nation together, strengthen our nation. Americans need healthcare, we need all kinds of things, and we have to put our country first. We can't have open borders. That's why Donald Trump won. We can't have an open border policy. No country has it. We don't want it. Come here the right way. That's all we're saying. Conservatives are a very friendly group, very loving. It's not about right versus left. It's about right and wrong. That's it. That's it. All right, you guys. See ya, Max. What did Max say? Is Max mad at me? I'm Black. What does the color of my skin have to do with anything? I'm a Black woman. But I'll be happy when we get away from that kind of stuff, which I don't know. You guys think that'll ever happen? Well, we just consider ourselves as American. Race is a made-up thing. It's just made up. I can't see what's going on in the chat. Sorry. Good night, Sebastian. Doesn't matter if I'm Black or white. If I'm speaking truth, then we should all be able to relate. We all should have a conversation. What does color of my skin matter? I'm not understanding. Thank you, Drew Daniels. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. My father is one of the carrier. No, it wasn't fake. That's fake news. Let me remove your comment because it's like, why put stuff out there? That's not true. That's not true. It's just not true. Hell no. As long as we judge, race will always be an issue. It'll always be an issue, but I wish that it wasn't. I do. But if you guys are wondering about the color of my skin, I'm a Black woman, obviously. Should it matter though? My neighbor went back to Mexico because he didn't want to be chased by ICE, self-deported himself. John, let me tell you something. I feel that was the right thing to do. Smart. I'm not saying that I don't feel for people, but that gives him a chance to come into this country the right way. So he's not banned. That's how I feel. You know, people come here all the time, but there's a process. There has to be a process. It stops drugs from coming into this country illegally. I'm not saying that your neighbor was into all that stuff, John, and it stops children from being trafficked. It's just that you have to know who's coming into the country for national security purposes. Doc, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Hello, I'm 51 years old and a white man. I remember when Mr. Barack Obama was president, we never had to worry about the race card. Keep up the good work. I don't mind those comments. Thank you, Jason. Thank you. And you're not wrong, misunderstood, but this is what they've caused. The liberals have started a civil war. Unfortunately. It's a battle between reality and rewritten history. You guys, I'm going on. It starts within ourselves and judging our own, then we can turn towards the community. Yeah, damn it, you know, race gets brought up more than I would like. And sometimes I touch on it. Like I touched on the video with Obama and Michelle, the AI generated video. I didn't like the conversation, but that's what was happening. So I did touch on it. I still say it doesn't make Donald Trump racist. Be mad at me. But that came from his staffer. I don't like that race comes up so much, but in the United States, we really can't get around it because race just surrounds us. We talk about race, white, Black, Mexican. Well, Mexican is not a race, that's an ethnicity, but still, We talk about it. And my family's part Puerto Rican, right? So race comes up a lot. Ethnicity comes up a lot. And I'm still Republican. So some people wonder, how can I be a Black woman and Republican? But Republicans fought for civil rights and the rights of all people. Another story for another day. Obama was afraid to confront it. Claude, where'd you come from? It's another story for another day. But I'm conservative. And that was before Donald Trump got into office. Donald Trump is a racist, but these liberals keep saying it and saying it like it's the truth. So I think you believe he's not one. That man is not racist. I don't believe that he's racist at all. There's no evidence of that. Donald Trump has done a lot for all people. I really believe that people judge, not all people, obviously. I'll say Donald Trump judges people. He does say a lot of things for shock value. I can't say that he's racist. I think that Donald Trump says things very bluntly and boldly. That's what I'm gonna say. I'm a Republican also. African Americans started that party. I think people forget that African Americans used to be primarily Republican. He's like a shock DJ. Misunderstood is awesomely great. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I can barely text. I have to use voice to text. All right, you guys, I'm gonna lay it down. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. Feel free to hype the video or double tap the screen. But leave me. I do look at my comments under my videos and on my community wall. If you guys are ever trying to get a message to me, you want me to research something, you can leave it for me. You can leave it. Claude, Dr. Manhattan, thank you guys for holding me down tonight. Damage, I see you. Thank you guys. John, what's good, Mud? The Republican Party in 1997. That's right, John Smith. Jimmy. All right, you guys. I will see you guys later. I'm going to lay it down. I got to study a little bit. I'm going to read a little bit, and I will be back later. Bye-bye. Praying for this country and all of us. Good night / morning.